What up, everybody? Hello. Welcome to episode 7 of Wrestle Recap. My name is Justin Tate.
My name's Michelle Tate.
We are the only brother-sister duo crazy enough to take you on the journey of wrestling throughout the decades.
And we have a real fun time doing it.
We do now, forewarning, usually we do the show live on Sundays, but today it is actually pre-recorded. We're recording this on Saturday because as this episode is released, it's dead in the middle of AEW All In, and go figure, two wrestling fans kind of want to see that.
Also, I'm sure we just really don't want to, put conflict onto the fans who they just don't know if they want to watch All In, the biggest AEW wrestling show of the year, or listen to us. Like, come on, that's such a hard choice.
It's a tough call. It really is. And if you need any help deciding, I can put on some sunglasses, put on some jeans, and take off my shirt and put my thumb up, if that'll help you decide.
There you go. I can, I don't know, just swoop my hair the other way and I'm Tony Schiavone, basically. So it's fine.
Now, speaking of pay-per-views, this is the beginning of a 3-weekend run of pay-per-views because next weekend we have WWE Bash at Berlin. So instead of talking about all the current wrestling news that happened this past week, I say we make some predictions. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to turn you up in my ears so I can hear better. There we go. Let's do it.
So let's go through the card as it stands right now on Saturday, 1 week before the pay-per-view. Gunther versus Randy Orton for the World Heavyweight Championship. Who you got?
Oh, man. Ugh. Gunther.
Yeah. Gunther all the way. He just got it. And Randy's been the champion like 1,000 times. We don't need it right now.
Yeah, I thought about it and I was like, is Randy reaching the territory of I'm the older talent that needs to put over the younger, newer talent?
I mean, in a way, but you look at him and he's like in fantastic shape. It's not like he's let himself go. He's still doing good stuff in the ring. Like, I mean, this is like
the new 20 in wrestling. Like 40 is like the peak right now.
Yeah. We used to talk about like back in the day when they talked about how WCW had all the old guys. That's what WWF was saying. Like Hogan was like 40 or something. Yeah. Like it's ridiculous. But next match on the card, Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens for the WWE Championship. You know, last night on SmackDown, they kind of teased Kevin Owens turning on Cody and really whacking him with that belt. How do you think this one's going to turn out?
Cody's winning this. I don't care what kind of shenanigans they're trying to pull on us. Cody is so winning this. You?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd love to see Kevin Owens be the champion again, but at the same time, Cody didn't have a problem beating Solo or anybody else they put in his way since WrestleMania. So he's got to lose the belt eventually, obviously, but it's just not going to happen yet.
It's not time yet, Justin.
It is not. It is not. We have a mixed tag team match. This one could be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this one. Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley versus Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan. This is a storyline that has captivated so many people because honestly, I think it's kind of rejuvenated people's love for Damian Priest because when he was still champion, people were kind of going, okay. But like the moment he lost that championship and got paired up with Rhea Ripley, it was like perfect all over again.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to say Damian needs Rhea's charisma to lift him, but it is just very refreshing to see a completely platonic male-female relationship on TV, especially after all the nasty we've had to watch with Liv and Dom. But I think them as a team elevates him a lot more. And that's not knocking on him at all. I just think that she has more of a maybe vocal presence that's easier to convey to the audience. I don't know, but who do you think's winning this one?
I mean, it seems like it's going to go on for a while. So I think that there's time for Damian and Rhea to come out on top eventually. So why not have Dominic and Liv win this one?
You think?
I don't know, but just in my mind, I don't. This is a popular storyline. There's no need to rush it right now.
I kind of think Priest and Rhea win it because they are so new and Rhea lost the title or lost the match to Liv. So I feel like they need a win right here in the beginning to establish them as this strong duo. Yeah, it could really go either way.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, I mean, if Damian and Rhea won this one, then Rhea could somewhat claim, okay, I've beaten you in one match, a tag team match. How about give me another shot at that belt?
That's my thinking, yeah.
Maybe. We have a strap match, which it has been a while since we've seen a strap match in WWE. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. The feud keeps on going, and I still really like this feud. What do you think about this match?
I think CM Punk wins it because it gives Drew a win, Punk a win, then it sets up for the third one.
That's right. That's right. Which hopefully will be Hell in a Cell. That's my dream, but we'll see.
I'm going to bring up this match later in today's episode because it has to do with the strap match, and we've got one on there, and it's just kind of weird timing, but I'll bring that up later.
Okay, and as of Saturday, a week before the pay-per-view, we only have one more match that has been announced officially. The Unholy Union versus Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill for the Women's Tag Team Championship. This could be an interesting one, and I'm not sure which way they'll go with it. Do you have any feelings on this one?
I really don't. My guess is just Bianca and Jade, because they are such superstars, especially Bianca. Like, look at her history just within the company. And I just think they need to elevate them. And that is the way to do it. I'm not real passionate on this match, but that's just how I'm leaning. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Now, what's surprising to a lot of people is if you go over to WrestleStats, that's on Twitter, WrestleStats, you'll find out that in WWE as a whole, on TV, the Women's Tag Team Championship has been in more matches this year than any other championship on WWE or NXT. And so they're putting it in, but it still seems like it just needs a little bit more oomph, and I don't know what it is. And I'm really happy to see Alba and Isla win it, but I don't know. I can see this one going either way, and I think I'm kind of fine with it going either way.
Can I ask you a controversial question?
Oh boy, we're starting off hot. At least we're doing it while AEW's live right now in London.
Exactly.
So
It's not that bad. I just want to know, how do you feel about Jade's performance since she's come over to WWE? Now, you see, she left AEW. She was kind of known for doing the same old squash match, exact same match, spent a lot of time at the Performance Center, came to WWE, and it kind of seems like we're seeing the exact same stuff that we saw in AEW. And everyone, of course, all the tribalists are like, she's so much better now that she's in WWE, which I'm not knocking her. She can do a lot of stuff that I can't do, but I'm not sure she has been. It's almost like she seems more self-conscious than she did in AEW. Like her confidence.
There's a good point. Yeah. I mean, I do see more personality out of her now than I did in AEW. You know, back then it was just, I'm a badass, I got a body, and I'm going to destroy you. Whereas we see her interactions with Naomi and with Bianca, and there is a personality there. Can that get you everywhere? Well, I mean, look at Hulk Hogan. But, you know, there's time. I mean, there was that one pay-per-view match a while back where it wasn't great what she did in the ring, but there is time. And I think she is in the best place possible for her to learn how to do it right.
Part of me wonders if there's been rumors about Ricky Starks coming over and going to NXT, and everyone going to Penta going to NXT, and everyone's like, no, he doesn't need to go to NXT. He's main roster. And part of me makes me wonder if Jade, because she was kind of the first one, went right to the main roster, then it was like, ooh, maybe we shouldn't have done that, because she would be killing it in NXT right now. So maybe that's why they're a little more hesitant on bringing over talent and throwing them right there, right in the mix from the beginning. So
right. Well, and they did the same with Ethan Page. He's NXT champion right now. Ethan Page has been all over the world. He's been doing this for years and years and years, but they still put him in NXT first.
Yeah. So I don't know if they kind of are a little more hesitant now. I don't know. We'll
see. It should be a good show. And I love these daytime pay-per-views. If every single pay-per-view was on a Saturday afternoon, I'd be the happiest wrestling fan.
Justin, college football is on from today until like, I think there's not a weekend without football through like January, and I'm so freaking happy. It's my time of year, Justin.
Listen,
But
as I've told you before, all the other sports are fake. Pro wrestling is real.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think a lot of stuff is skewed. I mean, there's a lot of coin tosses that I'm like, that just decided the whole game. But let's go into the time machine, Justin, because I'm ready to talk about NWA Starrcade 1986.
Let's do it. I'm going to gear up. We here?
We made it. It smells like crayons. So, as I said, we are talking about NWA Starrcade 1986 today. This seems like a very much back and forth competition with WWE at this point. The show was on November 27th, 1986, which in tradition was on Thanksgiving. They decided to do two venues. I have a hair. Drive me nuts. Okay, there we go. They decided to do two venues again, the same two venues as last year's Starrcade, which was Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the Omni Coliseum in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank goodness they didn't go for 4 locations just to try to one up. That would have been a cluster, right? The attendance in Greensboro was 16,000 and then about 14,000 in Atlanta. So pretty good, crowd.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, especially for back then and 2 different locations, yeah. The commentators we've got today are Bob Caudle and Johnny Weaver in Greensboro and Tony Schiavone and Rick Stewart in Atlanta. Now, Rick Stewart was previously a commentator in the Central States Territory, but it had recently been purchased by Jim Crockett Promotions. So there you go.
And we'll see several things having to do with that buyout of Central States throughout this show.
Excellent. Cool. Well, do you have any idea what the #1 song in the U.S. was on this day? It's a good one. I actually know this song.
1986, late 1986. I'm going to go with something by Lionel Richie.
Close, only not.
Oh.
It's going to be You Give Love a Bad Name by Mr. Bon Jovi.
There it is.
A bad name. Yeah.
I love
great
it.
song. Great tune. Yes. So let's get into the background a little bit. The NWA was still battling the national expansion of Vince McMahon's WWF. So again, if it feels like a competition, it's because it is. Jim Crockett was making acquisitions of his own, though. Earlier this year, he purchased Central States Wrestling, as I said before. He would later sell in a few months after this event. Interesting, right? Earlier this year.
Yeah, and I believe he actually sold it back to the guy that he bought it from, who I think was maybe Bob Geigel, but I could have that wrong.
I'm such an adult because I was like, there are so many unnecessary taxes that you had to pay because of that. Like, what? Why would you do that? Earlier this year, WWF's WrestleMania had been held in 3 different cities. So NWA decided to run the 2 different venues again, but this would be the last time they do it. Thank God. At 4 hours, this was the longest installment of Starrcade in the event's history.
And what's wild is when I brought it up on Peacock, I was like, yeah, this is a long one. And I saw it was like just under 4 hours on Peacock. I was like, good God almighty, this is going to take a while.
And can you imagine actually watching it live and like the intermissions are actually in there and stuff? So 3 hours and 52 minutes, I think, is what it was of content. But if you were watching it live, it was way longer.
Oh, man, I can't even imagine.
Crazy. All right, so we open up the show with a somewhat generic Starrcade theme song.
Whoa.
Oh, heck. Wow, I scrolled way down.
We got some stuff we got to cover here.
Justin,
courtesy of our favorite Twitter account. What's that Twitter account?
That Twitter account is called... Bam.
Yeah, that's right.
I am so sorry. I got this new mouse, you see, to make things easier, and I made it way harder on myself because I just kept scrolling, dude. All right, wrestle stats, man.
I was like, whoa, they might have cut out the intermission, but we can't cut out the wrestle stats on this show.
You get an extra sound cue. What are we doing, Justin?
Wrestle stats.
All right, hit me. Hit me.
On the show, there are 34 people who are competing on Starrcade 1986. 34 of them, out of them, 19 are still with us today. That's about 55, almost 56%. Pretty good.
I'll take it.
Pretty good. Out of all the NWA pay-per-views we've covered so far, that's 73 wrestlers, 40 of which are still alive. So that drops down to about 54%. Still really good for shows that happened almost 40 years ago. Now, out of all the WWE pay-per-views we've covered so far, that's NWA and WWE, 125 wrestlers, 65 are still alive. So that's a flat 52%. We're still on the plus side, Michelle.
We're dwindling. We're getting closer to that threshold of 50. Oh, no.
Now, we do have some wrestlers who this is going to be their final appearance in a pay-per-view match that we're going to cover right here on Wrestle Recap. Some of them, this is the only time we're going to see them. Haven't seen them before or after. Those wrestlers are Bill Dundee, Bobby Jaggers, Don Kernodle, Jimmy Valiant, Nelson Royal, Paul Jones, Rocky Kernodle, and Tim Horner. And one more little stat for you. This is the final and only, I believe, appearance of a certain championship, the NWA Central States Heavyweight Championship. This is the only time we're ever going to see it defended on pay-per-view.
Very interesting. I'm very sad about that final appearance by Bill Dundee because I really enjoyed his match on this.
Yeah.
He became one of my favorites. And now, well, you're crushing my dreams by telling me I'm not going to see him again. That sucks. All right. So as I was saying before, I rudely cut out the Wrestle stats. We opened the show with kind of this generic Starrcade theme song, but we got a laser light show. So that was cool.
What was that?
Yeah, the lasers, they spell out Starrcade 86 and they zoom out and they show the ring and it's got this giant scaffold built around it. And the whole vibe of this whole intro was just, kind of darker and grungier than years past. Very rock and roll feel.
Yeah, no, I mean, there were times where you couldn't even tell if there was a crowd out there. But you know what also seems grungier? Tom Miller, the ring announcer. Because we talked about a couple of years ago, like the first couple of Starrcades we watched, he had like this big dark beard. And, he had a comb over. It was an obvious comb over, but he looked all right, I guess. And then on last year's Starrcade, he had shaved off the beard. And I swear to God, it aged him 20 years and he still looks the same here. I don't know why he did that, but, Tom, buddy, grow the beard back.
I think beards became not cool toward the late 80s and throughout the 90s. And then they made this recent comeback and now mustaches are making a recent comeback. And I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, I don't like the mustache thing. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, well, they do play an instrumental version of the national anthem. And of course, they're showing the crowd as always.
Yeah, and did you see during the crowd, there was a guy looking up at the screen, trying to see himself on TV, and he looked just like Brody Lee. Not kind of looks like him. It was freaking Brody Lee on that screen.
I did see him, and I even Googled, I was like, what year was Brody Lee born? Because I was like, well, did he look like that beardy as a teenager maybe? But yeah. I did see him because I was laughing at the woman next to him frantically waving, and then I was like, oh my God, it's Brody Lee. So I did notice that. Did you notice that the song started skipping at the end? The track?
Yeah, it was weird. And I think it cut out the last note. It was like home of the free and the home of the... it was really weird.
Yeah, I was like, maybe that was right when CDs were becoming a thing. They had to hit the thing, those little Discmen with the anti-skip
they had the shock
device.
Absorber.
Yeah, but if you bumped it while you were getting on the bus, it just totally cut out your sound. And that anti-skip thing, it never worked. That was a scam.
It was.
Our commentators are announced. Johnny Weaver says for the first time that the Super Bowl couldn't be bigger than this. And this is the first time of many times tonight that we're going to hear that, hear it be compared to the Super Bowl. Perhaps it's because of the influx of football players they chose to use on WrestleMania 2. I don't know. They like the Super Bowl thing.
Yeah, it was because it's not, I don't know what Super Bowl attendance was like back then, but I still got to think it was more than Starrcade was getting in Greensboro, North Carolina. But, when they showed the commentators, this is one of those weird little things I noticed. Tony Schiavone and Rick Stewart in Atlanta, they had these comically huge microphones. These microphones are like a foot tall, and they each had one. But then they show Bob Caudle and Johnny Weaver in Greensboro, and they have a more regular microphone, but there's only one. So they're having to pass it back and forth.
I didn't understand if that was on accident or if they were like, oh, this little might cost a lot. We got to just have one.
Maybe so, but they lead us right into our first match. So let's get into the action. It's a tag team match. Don Kernodle and Rocky Kernodle versus Nelson Royal and Tim Horner. A bunch of guys, 4 guys who we are not going to see wrestle on a pay-per-view ever again. So we're going to spend a ton of time on this, but let's tell you a little bit about them. Don Kernodle, he's 71 years old right now. He's still with us. His final show back in 2006 in North Carolina. Go figure. He was a 6-time champion in the NWA, various championships. And after wrestling, he became an immigrations and customs enforcement, an ICE agent, which is
what? How random.
Crazy. Yeah, and then after that, he became a deputy sheriff there in North Carolina. So the guy he has a history of being a tough guy, I guess.
I wouldn't want to get in a fight with him. He'll like body slam me for being publicly intoxicated or something.
Because I know you, and you're constantly publicly intoxicated.
I'm drunk right now, Justin.
Yeah, just all the time. We can't get the bottle out of your hands. But his tag team partner is Rocky Kernodle, his kayfabe brother. We last saw him, believe it or not, on NWA Starrcade 1984 as Keith Larson. He had a match on that show. And Don Kernodle rather was in his corner. So it's kind of fun to see how that twist was kind of made. On the other side of the ring, we got the other team, Nelson Royal. He's still alive today at the age of 66, had his last match just a couple years after this Starrcade in South Carolina at an NWA house show. Get this. He once teamed with Wahoo McDaniel to face a black bear in a wrestling match.
How did they do that?
I've heard of these matches before, and I've even seen like pictures and video, and it is terrifying. Like, even though the bear is supposedly tame, can you really tame a bear?
That is really so weird, Justin, because someone, I don't remember who it was it Bryan Danielson, or maybe the person was saying it about Bryan Danielson, said just this week that they want to see Bryan Danielson face a bear in the ring. Or maybe Bryan Danielson said he wanted Swerve to face a bear in the ring. That sounds more right. But I'm like, how random. And so the coincidence of this timing popping up with that big quote, that's weird. But yeah, black bears are nicer than like brown bears and grizzly bears. I know that because I'm an animal lover, but poor bear. Like,
but that's kind of like saying that vomiting is better than diarrhea. Like, you don't really want to do
less
either.
Cramps.
Well, back to Nelson Royal. He actually originally played a snobby rich guy character, and then he became a cowboy character, which is interesting because during his wrestling career, he also owned a Western wear store that sold boots and hats and whatever cosplay cowboys wear. I don't know.
That makes so much more sense for what is coming later in this pay-per-view, but I will hold.
Yes, hold. Tim Horner, he's also with us today at the age of 65. In fact, I messed up earlier. I said Don Kernodle and Nelson Royal were still with us. They're not. I was looking at the wrong line here. Tim Horner is with us at the age of 65. He had his last match just about 10 years ago in Knoxville, Tennessee, previously teamed with Brad Armstrong to defeat Sting and Rick Steiner for the NWA National Tag Team Championships. You think Sting is a new thing, kids? Nah, he's been around a while. He later, Tim Horner, worked as a road agent / producer for WWE SmackDown, and in 2018 was elected county commissioner of Hamlin County, Tennessee. How about that?
Well, looky there, Justin. There's so many wrestlers involved with politics.
I know, for better or for worse. But let's get to the ring. There's no ring introductions here. We're right into the action, and the bell rings, and here we go. What did you notice just setting out?
Right away, that canvas, that dark blue mat, and then the crowd is pitch black. And so it's a very dark look. And I'm like, are we just trying to get, are you trying to get a jump on the 90s grunge coming up? Like, did you think that dark mat was a choice?
You know what? I liked the color of the dark blue mat on its own. I think I would have liked it better if we could see that there's actually people in the crowd.
Yeah, it was just very, very dark. And especially coming off WrestleMania 2, it was just, I didn't think it looked good. There you go.
Yeah.
Easy enough. It didn't look good.
Yeah. Well, Don Carnotto's wearing those tall white socks with the red and blue stripe at the top. I had those when I was a kid. Do you remember those? Like every kid had those.
Oh, yeah. I remember you walking around in those.
Yeah. And I actually stepped in dog poop while wearing them one time at a family barbecue for some friends of ours.
Yuck.
And, yeah. You know what's really, really funny is just earlier this morning, my wife and I went to the mall and we stopped by American Eagle because there was a couple sales in there. And I saw some tall cruise socks with a couple of stripes at the top. I bought a 3-pack.
Well, good for you because you earned them, Justin. These kids, they don't deserve those. They don't know what it was like back then, even though it was so much better back then. But
yeah, they're like these nice thick socks, and they're like perfect for like hanging around the house, and
perfect for stepping on dog poop. It'll protect your foot.
Believe me, there's some outside right now. I guarantee it. But so. One aesthetic thing, you were talking about the color of the canvas, but this version of the NWA logo that's on the apron, I have always hated that version of the NWA logo because supposedly it says NWA, but it looks like it says AWA to me. And this is when the AWA was still a thing. Do you know what logo I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do, because I was like, did they forget a stripe? Because I thought it looked weird. I was like, did they mess that? Because I've always joked that it looks like it's masking tape like in the middle of the room. I was like, did someone pull up a piece of the tape? Because, yeah, it does look like AWA. I agree.
Yeah. But another thing about the ring, we're just talking about the ring more than the match at this point.
I know. Well, there's a reason for that.
It's a fine match. It didn't mean anything. And it's a bunch of guys we're not going to see again. But the ring, when guys are bumping on it, it sounds more like the rings in 90s WCW that I remember watching Nitro, kind of that wooden sound on every single bump. Do you know what sound I'm talking about, or am I just making this up?
No, I do. It's the way you described it is perfect. A wooden, like, 90s bump. I totally get that. 90s wooden bump was the name of my first high school band, by the way. I'm just saying.
How many bands did you have?
So many.
So many. Okay. But the ropes, though, they still sound really funny when guys hit them. They have on every Starrcade. They're using the cables, which pretty much everybody but WWE uses, but they just have this weird, like, cracking sound every time that somebody hits the ropes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and I think maybe they think that's a good thing because it creates more sound, which means like more pain or something. I mean, it's good because it gives a visual or a sound cue to something visual, but I agree. It's just kind of amateur sounding. Maybe. Yeah. I'm becoming a WWE snob after 2 WrestleManias, I think.
Let's talk about this match. How did this one end?
Yeah, so Rocky Carnottle, he tried to roll up Tim Horner, but it's like their momentum kept going, and Horner ended up rolling Rocky up in a total reversal for the win. I mean, this match was fine. I'm just really starting to question the openers for these Starrcades, because I feel like every single opener on every Starrcade show has been very and I don't understand their strategy behind that.
It's like they're trying to ramp up and go with like the lamest to the least lamest, up until they get to the main event, rather than like making it more like a roller coaster.
Agreed. And I think the first match is very important because it hits hot and it gets you engaged and makes you want to stay tuned in. No one wants to come to any event and be super excited and then start off with the lamest. So I don't know, but there you go.
Well, there's nothing in between the matches for the most part on this show, kind of like last year on Starrcade. So we're right up into the next match in Atlanta.
Yep, we're going to Atlanta to a singles match between Brad Armstrong and gorgeous Jimmy Garvin with Precious. So let's talk a little bit about these guys. So Brad Armstrong was born in June of 1962, and he died at the age of 50 in 2012. So, I wonder what happened. He debuted in 1980, and his last show was in 2011, just 1 year before he died in Georgia. He comes from a wrestling family. His father is Bob Armstrong, and his brothers are Steve Armstrong, Scott Armstrong, who is a former WWE referee, and Brian Armstrong, a.k.a. Road Dogg.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty cool. He was the man under the mask in WCW's failed Arachnaman gimmick.
Oh my God.
I forgot about that completely.
Oh, a yellow and blue Spider-Man. They were bound to get sued, and they did.
They did get sued? I didn't know that.
I don't know if it was an actual lawsuit or if it was just a cease and desist, but yeah, it went away very quickly because Marvel was like, no.
How lame is Arachnaman? It's like you're using the like biological term for Spider-Man. Like that's stupid.
It sounds like a Spider-Man knockoff toy that you would buy at Dollar Tree.
Yeah, or like at Spirit Halloween, how the costumes have to say something else. Like that's what it seems like.
Like a Borat costume is European immigrant.
Yes, totally. I love going to Spirit and just looking at the costumes for that purpose because it's so funny what they come up with. Last thing about Brad is he briefly worked as a commentator on WWE's ECW brand before becoming a producer. So there you go.
Yeah, talented guy.
Yeah, Jimmy Garvin, he was born in 1952 and he's still with us at the age of 71. His debut was in 1968, but his last match was in 2000 over in Canada. So there you go. He was a member of the legendary man, I can't talk today, Fabulous Freebirds. So cool. He was the stepson of Ronnie Garvin, who we will see on this show. But even though they're billed as brothers, like it's his stepdad. That's kind of creepy.
It is kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. It is weird. It's super weird. Like, I guess the whole stepdad, I mean, now in 2024, that could make like a really good story, like AKA Christian Cage, hello. But I just think it's kind of weird.
I feel like it's time to come clean to our listeners that I'm not your brother. I'm actually your stepdad.
That is so gross and weird, dude. That is so weird. Oh, gosh. Well, Jimmy now works as an airline transport pilot.
Yeah.
So there you go. Is an
cool.
airline transport pilot different than just a regular pilot? Like, could he have flown me to Australia?
I bet he could have. I don't know. I don't know what he flies, but would you want him to fly you to Australia?
I mean, that's fine. How old is he? He's what, like 71? That's fine. As long as he's not above like 75. That's when those motor skills start going. So, So right when they come out, I thought Jimmy had a wig on because just from afar, because the camera quality is not that great. But no, it was just a perm, which do you remember going to get haircuts as kids? And there was always a woman in there getting a stanky perm. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was like that specific smell of like burnt hair and chemicals.
Perfect.
And and like they would walk around, whoever got the perm would walk around for like the next week smelling like that.
Absolutely. Well, now, we left that smell in the 90s and I didn't smell it for like 20 years, but now it's back, Justin. But it's teenage boys that are getting perms. This is a thing. And like when I go to my salon, there is always the perm smell and it's always like a 14-year-old boy sitting with all the little foils in his hair. And it's funny because a lot of girls are like, in cosmetology school, we didn't even learn perms because it's not a thing, but they're having to learn them because these boys want the broccoli haircut. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh my God.
It's like their head is the stem and their hair is the broccoli tree. That's what they want. And like, even my friend's kid, he's like this little boy, he's like 10 and he's got stick straight hair, but he got a perm and now it's got this volume in it.
So
it went from old ladies in the 90s to like junior high boys.
As a guy without the ability to grow hair, this really pisses me off. like you have the ability to have a head full of hair and that's what you do with it.
Well, they're going to go bald soon because that perm like ruins your hair. It's like when you bleached your hair when you were like 20 and it fell out and never came back. So there you go.
But I tell you what, talking about Jimmy Garvin's hair, you should look a picture of him up now because his hairline looks about like mine.
Really? Is it still long in the back?
No. He's got it like shaved or like buzzed or something. But yeah, no, those flowing locks are gone.
Oh, well, I want to know if he's still gyrating in his silver suspenders. Because he started off to he had the silver suspenders, they were like sequins or something, and he's like gyrating, and then he takes them off, but he's just wearing like tidy whities under. I'm like, is that what you're gonna wrestle in?
Yeah, yeah, and like the sparkles. I mean, he looked like he skinned a mirror ball and wore its skin. Like, and then Precious like gets down on her knees to take his pants off, and I'm like, I think I sat on the remote. What are we watching here? But
Totally agree
yeah,
with
it was quite the outfit.
Yeah, well, as for Brad Armstrong's look, he was looking like Kenny Omega over there. Do you notice that? I was like, oh my God. And maybe it's just
I can kind of see it.
I miss Kenny Omega so much. I used to not like him, Justin. I thought he was the goofiest mofo when AEW started. And now I love his wrestling, but I just see his tweets and he is such a kind person, especially to animals. And I just love him and I miss him. And I hope all of the best things in the world happen to him. But anyway, off my Kenny Omega soapbox. Did you notice they did brighten up the crowd a little bit for this match?
Yeah, it seemed like they had a better grip on the lighting for Atlanta than they did for Greensboro. Like they paid a little bit more attention. And maybe that was just because there was that scaffold over the ring for the scaffold match we're going to see later that they had to expand the lights a little bit to manage that. I'm not really sure. But, since this is the first match we've seen in Atlanta, I realized that Tony Schiavone is pulling double duty. He's the ring announcer, and then he gets out of the ring and does commentary. He should get double pay for that.
You are right. And I bet that was kind of stressful having to run back and forth because obviously it wasn't like, the headset. If you're on a headset, it's connected to a wire, so you can't just run back and forth. So, wow, you're right. I didn't even notice that till you pointed that out. I was kind of surprised that Jimmy Garvin was the heel. I don't know why. I think the sparkling pants and Precious and everything, I just assumed he would be the good guy. I don't know, but this ref, Justin, ref, he is new. He is in many matches in this, but he has the worst Buster Brown haircut of my life. And I couldn't think of what his haircut was called. I had to Google straight mullet with bangs curled under in the 90s or in the 80s. And then, I'm like, he should go get a perm at this point because anything is better than that Buster Brown haircut. That was terrible.
Yeah, apparently this referee's name is Scrappy McGowan, and they said his name 1,000 times during this whole pay-per-view. As far as I can tell, he stayed right there in the Atlanta area after wrestling. He became an engineer. But his hair, it was like Hulk Hogan's in that it hung down in the same way, and he kind of had the same hairline, but at times it also kind of seemed like Jeff Daniels in Dumb and Dumber.
Justin,
it was like a cross between those.
Those are the two names that popped in my head. It was Hulk Hogan and Jeff Daniels but you could tell he was bald because his bangs started back here. And look, I'm sure he's a great guy. I don't mind bald people, bald men, but that haircut where it's just like bangs down here and curled under and you're a man, I could not handle this haircut. I don't know how that was. Was that cool? Was that like a cool haircut back then?
I think people were looking more for the mustache at the time than they were at the hair.
Oh Lord! Well, it was horrible.
He should have gotten a perm.
I know he should have. That's what I'm saying. At least give that Buster Brown some body. Well, I loved when Brad, he was in a hold of some sort and he yelled, "My gosh," in pain. He looked right at the camera, "My gosh." I was like, how wholesome are you? You're not even saying, "My God."
Oh, Brad.
My gosh. So cute. It was a good match. Lots of momentum shifts. The end was really exciting. The crowd was going nuts and I really didn't know who would win. The time ended. So the match ends in a time limit draw at 15 minutes. So the time ended when Jimmy was jumping off of the top rope. So they kept going, but eventually they get pulled apart and Jimmy leaves. And the crowd was not happy with that being a draw. And honestly, I wasn't either. They were really building up at the end and I was excited to see who would win.
Yeah, I think at one point, Tony Schiavone announced that there was 1 minute left and then 45 seconds, 30, 15. And then once I saw Jimmy Garvin going up to the top rope, I went, this thing's about to ring right when he's in midair. And about halfway through his splash, ding, ding, ding. And I went, oh, dang it.
It was good timing.
But it was a fun match.
Yeah, it was good timing. I don't know why I'm amazed. Like for back in '86, that was really good timing. All they had to have was like a stopwatch. But
Right,
anyway,
right.
let's go back to Greensboro.
Greensboro, a tag team match. The Barbarian and Shaska Watley versus Baron Von Raschke and Hector Guerrero. Now, we've seen the Barbarian before. We saw him just last year on Starrcade. He had that arm wrestling match, which turned into a regular match. His tag team partner here, Shaska Watley, died at the age of 54 back in 2005. His last match was in 1998. Now, a lot of people know Shaska Watley better as Pez Watley. That's what he spent the most of his career being. Before wrestling, he was known as a power lifter. This is crazy. And I was just doing some research on this. Apparently, later in his career, he suffered from heart failure and was actually pronounced dead twice while waiting for a heart transplant, which has got to just be like the most terrifying thing ever.
Wait a minute. So he was pronounced dead twice while waiting, and then he got a heart transplant and continued to live longer? Or was the
I think that was the case, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's terrifying. I have a particular friend who died like 3 times in a car wreck, but she's alive and walking around. And I don't know. I freaking love all of those like near death experience stories. They fascinate me.
It's crazy. Well, on the other side of the ring for this tag team match, Baron Von Raschke, who is still with us today at the age of 84. He debuted in 1966. Final match in 1996. Now, while in the WWF, his finishing move, which was the claw, he would get his hand like this and put it on the guy's head and just squeeze. They would censor it on television. They put a big red X saying that it was too violent for anybody to see. He actually, modern fans, you might have spotted him if you were watching AEW Full Gear back in 2021 during the street fight. He put that same claw finishing move on Ethan Page. Can you believe that?
Was he just like in the audience and was like working? And because he obviously wasn't announced for the match.
They had like a few like classic wrestlers out there, and he was sitting out there, and they worked it out to where the match spilled out over there near Baron Von Raschke, and he just put that claw on. It was great.
How cool.
Yeah. Now, when he wasn't wrestling, he worked as a substitute teacher. And we talked about George the Animal Steel last week on WrestleMania, how he was a teacher. Same thing here for the Baron, which has got to be terrifying to see that guy walk into your classroom. His tag team partner is Hector Guerrero, still with us at the age today of 69. And his last match was back in 2010. So he lasted quite a while in the business. And of course, Hector Guerrero is part of the legendary Guerrero family. His father, Gory Guerrero, his brothers, Chavo, Mando, and Eddie Guerrero, nephew, Chavo Guerrero, you still see him pop up from time to time, and his niece, Raquel Diaz, who was in NXT for a little while. Now, Hector is known, of course, for being part of a famous wrestling family. Unfortunately, he's also known as being the man in the chicken suit for WWF's failed gobbledygooker gimmick.
I think that's quite an accomplishment, like, because it became so, it's like that movie, The Room, how it's like the worst movie of all time. So it became like famous and good because it was the worst. So that's how I see that.
Well, and poor Hector, he was also the man under the mask as NWA's Lasertron gimmick.
Is he also hologram on Collision? I'm just kidding.
Can you imagine?
No really hate toward. I think hologram's great. No hate.
So more about education. Another guy going into education after wrestling. Hector Guerrero worked as an elementary school PE teacher. So that's awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah. Like how weird, just because his family is so involved in the business. Like you would think, huh? Well, Justin, you and I, we used to participate in a local comedy show for many years. And I remember one year you submitted a script. So like they were going to do this play the entire summer, and it was chosen, and it was about wrestling, obviously, because that's all we know. And the villain character, his name was Baron Von Raschke. And now I totally understand where you got that inspiration, because this villain is usually a big, imposing figure, all black, very mwahaha. And now it all makes sense to me.
Yep. It was my tribute to Nazi wrestlers.
Right, right. Well, in the beginning, what was this dubbed in Mexican music? Because
Oh
I
my
swear,
God.
I felt like I was in Epcot because the Mexico Pavilion is my favorite in Epcot. I love that Three Caballeros, and I was like, I swear they play this song when you're walking around in Mexico at Disney World.
I don't know anything about the food in the Mexico Pavilion at Epcot, but I could sit at that restaurant or in one of those boats literally all day. I love the Mexico Pavilion.
Me too.
It's so
all
cool.
dark and cool, and they've got all the cool little like sugar skulls and stuff. I love that place.
Yeah, but that Mexican music was made even funnier by the fact that Baron von Raschke had to enter with Hector Guerrero.
Yeah, and he's like the whitest dude ever.
It's like, wait, what? What? You couldn't split this up? But anyway.
Right. Well, at first, I thought Hector was Eddie under a different name because they look so similar. Like, I had to Google it. I was like, is Eddie Guerrero Hector Guerrero? But what I want to know is he involved in the custody war for Dom?
Oh, well, you know what? I mean, we've talked about it before. Somebody on the internet actually tracks who is the lineal father of Dominic Mysterio. So never know. Could have gone to Hector.
Hector's got to be thrown in there at some point. He's got to.
I mean, he's got to be in the mix, but they also had him wear a sombrero and they announced him from Mexico. He's from El Paso and speaks perfect English. So
it's like all the Russians that, are from Russia, but they talk like they're from Minnesota because they're from Minnesota.
Yeah, it's just like, these Southern wrestling fans, they don't own a map or an atlas. They'll be fine. But now, for as scared as he looked doing interviews on last year's Starrcade, Johnny Weaver, not bad at all on commentary.
No, I thought he did a really great. He was probably one of the better ones since we started.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really enjoyed listening to him. Hector Guerrero during the match hits his big dive over the top rope onto the Barbarian, not even touching the rope, cleared the whole thing. You didn't see that kind of thing much back then. There were high flying moves, but clearing the top rope like that was a pretty new thing back at the time and impressive to see here.
It's the dawn of the flippy shit, and I love it.
Well, we do have to sound the alarm though. I don't have an alarm here, but we have a butt crack alert.
I love butt cracks.
Shaska Watley pulled out Guerrero's butt crack. I need a gorilla-ism for that. His gluteal split.
We need a siren. Gluteal split.
It's a gluteal split and a beauty.
And most of them aren't that beautiful, but
Yeah, well, but then we get butt crack alert number 2 because almost immediately after that, Barbarian pulled out Guerrero's butt crack. Like at this point, like those two things were so close together. I was starting to wonder if it was just some sort of a rib on Hector Guerrero. Oh, we're going to pull down his pants as many times as we can tonight.
it had to be initiation of some sort. But, in this match, I didn't feel like Baron did that much. Like, it kind of felt more like a handicap match, like a 2-on-1 against Hector, and Baron kind of came in at the end.
Yeah. It's almost like they were saving him for a hot tag, but for like a reason it had to be a really hot one, like wait forever. But when he finally got tagged in, Baron literally goose stepped across the ring. Like, I saw that and I was like, oh my God. And it, of course, it harkens back to his days as a Nazi character.
Oh,
and then when he goose stepped, the crowd cheered. We're in the South. We're in the South.
It's not even just being in the South. I mean, I was just being nice earlier when I said they showed the crowd, and why I noticed that Brody Lee character, I was looking at the 4 teeth next to him, but that makes sense that they would cheer for the goose step. I didn't realize what a goose step was at first. Now I understand.
Yeah.
Well, Hector and Baron were a very odd pairing, no?
Yeah, it was kind of weird, and I'm not really sure. I believe the announcer said that this was a grudge match. So maybe they had some sort of thing going on weekly TV before this, but it is a very odd idea to put the two of those together. I'm not really sure, but Baron finally won with, guess what? Not the claw, an elbow drop. Not off the top rope, just an elbow drop. And it gets the 1, 2, 3. Like we said, matches back then, they could literally end out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, Snoop Dogg took out The Miz with an elbow drop and at WrestleMania, so it can be a powerful one, Justin.
It was an elbow drizzle.
Oh, Snoop Dogg's my favorite.
Elbow drizzle is what I get at Baskin Robbins, actually. It's quite good.
That actually sounds really nasty.
I just remember that I have ice cream to make tonight. Anyway, off topic. We go backstage to Johnny Weaver. He is attempting to interview Dusty Rhodes, who's in his dressing room, but the door's shut and he is refusing to talk to anybody.
I am loving this rebellious emo teenage phase of Dusty. Like he's going through it, man. And he's like, no. I don't want
I just see him sitting in this dark dressing room all by himself, listening to like The Cure and wearing like this oversized hoodie and typing an entry on LiveJournal, you know?
He's got his iPod mini, not even the real one. He's got his mini because that one was cheaper. I got that in 9th grade and that's what's my emo phase. So,
the little click wheel. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I still have my blue iPod mini. It's going to go in a museum one day.
Oh boy. Well, now we go to a no disqualification tag team match.
Yes, we do. Now, this is the NWA United States Tag Team Championship. We're in Atlanta, and it's the Kansas Jayhawks versus the Russians. So, I mean, these Kansas Jayhawks, I've never heard of this in my life, this tag team. So let's talk about it. We've got Bobby Jaggers, who was born on January 8th, 1948. So let's see. That was like 27 years after our grandpa, because that's Elvis's birthday, and January 8th was our grandpa's birthday.
True.
He died at the age of 64, and he debuted in 1972. His last match was in 1989 at WWF Wrestling Challenge in Wichita, Kansas. There you go. He did spend 18 months in Vietnam as a member of the U.S. Army. So thanks for your service, Bobby Jaggers. Before wrestling, he worked at Nabisco Cookie Factory. He made Oreos. That's incredible. That's a great contribution to the world. We need that.
They should name a cookie after him. The Jagger.
Yes, totally. After wrestling, he became a civil engineer and eventually he worked as the road and bridge specialist for FEMA. These guys have such interesting careers.
I know, like these guys some of them just didn't hang on. They're like, no, I'm done with that. I'm going to go do something else. And they just do like this amazing job afterwards.
I know. So then we've got Dutch Mantell. Now, he was born in 1949 and he's still alive today at the age of 74. He debuted in 1972 and his last match was in 2013. I feel like that's so recent at SmackDown in Detroit. So I love when they have their final match on like a big show, not just some random. I feel like, I don't know, it's what they deserve. He was better known to modern fans as Zeb Coulter, managing wrestlers like Jack Swagger in WWE. He narrated 5 episodes in season 1 of Dark Side of the Ring. So I'm pretty sure that's like all of the episodes because I think there were only 5 or 6 in season 1. And now he hosts a podcast called Storytime with Dutch Mantell.
Yeah.
Pretty fun.
Really knowledgeable guy in the wrestling business too.
Yeah, I went and typed him into YouTube and it was just all of his episodes and who all he's interviewed and everything he's talking about. I really want to listen to it. So the Russians include Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev, which I have the hardest time saying his name. And we saw them both at Starrcade 1985 last year. Justin, I'm starting to get all of these Russians real confused. Like between the two companies, like it is hard. Because they all sound the same.
Names are so similar too, because NWA had the Koloffs and then WWF had Volkov. So it gets very, very strange.
Yes. And they all just look like white guys from Minnesota. And so I can't tell them. I'm like, they need some hair. They need to change something up. They all look the same. I don't know. But these Kansas Jayhawks, man, they goofy looking. They've got these red and blue chaps with like totally random pattern, like yellow and purple bandanas. Like it's like they went to Hobby Lobby, closed their eyes, picked a bandana. I was like, I'm going to wear that on the pay-per-view.
This is the one.
Exactly.
Well, watching this, Crusher Khrushchev, at least in this gimmick, before he became Repo Man and Demolition and all that, he looks a whole lot like modern WWE guy Luke Gallows, like just in build and facially even a little bit. I saw Luke Gallows in an airport one time. Like we walked within feet of each other. It's like, holy crap, that was Luke Gallows. Just one of my little wrestling encounters out of nowhere.
That's so cool. I've had my only random wrestling encounter was Matt Jackson at the Aria in Vegas. And I wasn't a Young Bucks fan at all until that day, but he was the nicest guy I've ever met. I didn't want to bug him for a picture, but he's like, do y'all want to take a picture? And he offered. And so super cool guy, but I love
Very
random
nice.
wrestling encounters. We've got another furry here with Dutch.
Oh, Lordy.
These hairy mofos, they must be single because no wife or no girlfriend would allow that to go on TV. I mean, I guess this was before manscaping in the 80s, but like, I feel like my husband in 2024 would be like, I'm not going on TV with all that back hair. Ew.
Yeah. He's so hairy that like the straps of his singlet get like buried in the hair.
Yeah.
That's how covered he is. It is so much hair.
It's so bad. It's so bad. Warf. Every time we get a hairy wrestler, that's the sound we gotta make.
That's the sound cue. We need a cut.
Yes, we do. Well, this is the second tag team match in a row where I felt like both members of one tag team were in the ring way too often. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
okay.
No, it started getting too one-sided for too long.
Yeah, and especially back to back, it became very noticeable. Now, Dutch, he grabs a whip, and apparently the whip is named Shoe Baby? What does that mean?
Shoe Baby.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
I'm just guessing. That's just how I would have said it. I don't know.
It sounds way cooler than Shababy. But he starts whipping them. Shapoopy. Oh, God. I had a dream last night. I was a Music Man, and I was going to drop out. Oh, wow. That's really weird that just triggered it. The Shapoopy.
I was there.
You were there. I'm sure you were. But yeah, he starts whipping them like for real. Ouch.
Yeah, no, we see in these strap matches and that sort of thing where they slap that strap across their back and that hurts enough. But this dude was like cracking the freaking whip. Dude. Yikes.
He was like the lady in the circus. Well, Crusher ends up grabbing this chain and he takes out Bobby Jagger after Bobby Jagger very swiftly avoided a clothesline from Ivan, but then he gets him with the chain and the Russians win and retain their championship in just 9 minutes and 10 seconds.
I mean, great match, crowd. The Russians, it's again, I feel like the match interest is growing as we go. We're still not at the point where I go, ooh, this one could be fun. But even though that was a no disqualification match, it was fine. It
was fine. It was better. But I also wonder if maybe if we were watching week to week to week back then, which obviously we weren't. Well, you might have been. I wasn't alive, but you were like 5. So I wonder if it meant more to these people just because they were in it at the time, maybe? Could be. And that's the one thing that we do unfortunately miss from time to time is some of the context because it's not available in some instances. But speaking of straps, we go to an Indian strap match in Greensboro. Ravishing Rick Rude versus Wahoo McDaniel. Wahoo. Oh boy. And so Ravishing Rick Rude, we haven't seen him on a pay-per-view yet, so let's get into it. He died in 1999 at just the age of 40 years old, which trips me out. Yeah. Because I think about this, I'm 42 right now. I've seen more of life than Ravishing Rick Rude did, which is insane to me. But his last match was actually in 1994 at a New Japan TV taping in Fukuoka, Japan. He grew up in Robbinsdale. He grew up in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Like we've talked about before, there's this whole group of wrestlers who all grew up there in town together. Mr. Perfect, Nikita Koloff, Crusher Khrushchev, a whole gang of them there. He is, Ravishing Rick Rude, the only wrestler to appear on WWF Raw and WCW Nitro at the same time. Have you seen that before? No. Like, how did he do that?
So back then, Raw was only live every other week, and they were taped on the weeks in between. Nitro was always live. And so Rick Rude appeared on a taped episode of Raw, but he had no contract with the WWF.
That's what I was going to ask.
And so he went over to WCW and appeared on Nitro at the same time he was on Raw. And there's actually, I've seen a split screen of the two shows side by side, and it is weird.
Well, now he's definitely not getting a contract with WWE because that probably made them real mad.
Yeah. Well, in the 90s, he actually cashed in a Lloyd's of London insurance policy due to all of his injuries he had incurred. But in return for receiving that insurance payout, he could not legally wrestle ever again. So he could work for a wrestling company, but he couldn't have a match ever again. It's pretty crazy.
Very crazy.
And then his opponent here tonight, we've seen him before, Wahoo McDaniel. We just saw him last year on Starrcade. In fact, I believe he's been on every single Starrcade that we have watched so far. And as we've talked about before, he's a hometown boy for us.
Oh, yeah. He'll always be my fave. I love me some Wahoo. But what I don't love is his music. What the hell, Justin, was this music? It's like the one time in my life that I don't appreciate a sexy sax. And like, what was this female voiceover? What was she even saying? What was
Yeah,
this?
the music starts with this woman saying, Ricky, you're so ravishing.
Oh, I thought
Where
this was
do you
Wahoo's.
come from?
Yeah.
He comes from Robbinsdale, Minnesota.
All these wrestlers are from Minnesota to us. Yeah. But, I thought that was Wahoo's music. Okay. Anyway, I was just thinking, I swear I saw Wahoo coming out. So that's why I was very confused because I was like, why is Wahoo getting the sexy sax? But anyway, so this is going back to the Drew and Punk thing. Okay. So this is a 4-corner strap match, which is like Drew McIntyre's and CM Punk's. And earlier this week, I heard a lot of people talking about, even on like the major podcast, about how they're disappointed that it's a 4-corner strap match because that makes it like way more lame and like more rules and whatnot. And what's funny is, obviously I've seen a million strap matches, but I'd never like heard of the 4-corner strap match. And so when they were talking about it this week on the podcast I listened to, saying like, it's a 4-corner, that's lame. And then I watched this pay-per-view, I'm like, that's it. That's the 4-corner strap match. And so how do you feel about the CM Punk and Drew McIntyre match being a 4-corner strap now that I've seen what it is, you know?
I don't like it. Like, just strap them together and have them beat the crap out of each other. Like, it just seems like we're playing a game of tag that, I don't know. I would rather it just be they're tied together and they can use the strap on each other.
I agree. And also because Drew is like such a more imposing figure than CM Punk. It is not feasible that CM Punk would be able to drag Drew to all these things. I mean, I've met CM Punk. He's like 5'10"-ish and Drew is, massive. And so I don't know. I think it's lame too, but I'm glad that it all kind of came together this week for me to actually see it.
Yeah. Well, and watching this match, I was also thinking about the Punk and Drew match and how, because of how many times that Drew has seemingly gotten screwed out of getting his revenge on CM Punk, it would make sense for Drew to accidentally knock CM Punk into the 4th corner. Again, just getting foiled by his own anger and letting it take over for him.
Maybe that's what'll happen. I mean, maybe. I don't know,
maybe.
But fun fact, had to Google this during this. So I got to thinking, and I was like, is Wahoo actually Native American? Because obviously the Russians are not, and Hector's not from Mexico and stuff. But I Googled it, and he was actually part of the Choctaw and Chickasaw tribe. So there you go. He is actually Native American. Thank you.
Here's one that'll ruin some childhoods out there.
Whoa.
Do you know who Iron Eyes Cody is?
No.
So on the old littering commercials, when the trash gets thrown at the Native Americans' feet, that's Iron Eyes Cody. Or if you ever saw the movie Ernest Goes to Camp, the old Native American guy in that's Iron Eyes Cody. All right, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Hey-yah-ho.
Okay.
Yes.
That man, 100% Sicilian. Not a drop of Native American blood in Iron Eyes Cody.
My face just like died. Like, I was so excited. I love the grandpa that teaches them the song or not the grandpa, the old Native American man. Yeah. He's not even Native American?
Sicilian.
Well, that sucks. Why'd you just ruined my day? That's the buzzkill of the week. That's what we need a sound cue for. Buzzkill of the week.
You know what I bet would bring your day back up?
What?
Watching Rick Rude take his shirt off.
Oh gosh, yeah, women went nuts, man. And like, this dude is like 0% body fat. And like, I kind of don't even think that's attractive, you know, like I see like Brian Cage and these really buff guys. I'm like, that wouldn't even be like comfortable. Like I need some squish to lay on, you know? So squish. But yeah, he took off his shirt and women were just blah.
Yeah. Well, and as much as they loved Rick Rude, the women, he played into it, of course, swinging his hips around and everything. But apparently he was a very devoted husband. Like he even wore his wedding ring to the ring and just put a piece of tape over it. Like he was a total family man, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
But during this match, Bob Caudle on commentary welcomes all the fans joining from Kansas City. And this is again because of the buyout of Central States Wrestling. So I guess now because it's still kind of a territory thing, they're finally able to tap into this and see it in their territory. Kind of a cool little note there. Wahoo during this match starts bleeding for some reason. I don't know how, but I'm pretty sure that all 4 Starrcades we've watched so far, Wahoo has bled in every single one of them.
I agree. I think you're right. And maybe that's just like, I'm like, is that your gimmick? I guess he just likes to bleed. Maybe he thinks like, oh, okay, I'm getting older. I have to compensate for something.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this being the 4 corners match. And normally whenever I think about a 4 corner strap match, I think about them going to each corner and slapping the top turnbuckle. Wahoo is dragging Rick Rude around and like touching a turnbuckle with his head. And then he'll go to the next one and like touch it with his back, just like lean on the turnbuckle for a second. And I'm like, kind of lame.
Big deal.
Not like, so visual. Like there needs to be rules on this, I think.
I agree with you. Yeah. And I mean, you're doing it for a TV audience and people watching. You got to make it your moment, Wahoo.
Exactly. Now, Wahoo here, 48 years old. We talked about 40 being the new 20 these days, but Wahoo looked freaking 60 something.
He really did. Poor Wahoo. Yeah,
but I mean, he still moved pretty well for 48. I mean, he was taking some bumps and at one point did like a head scissors while he was lying on the mat, like brought his feet completely over his head and grabbed Rick Rude around the neck. So, I mean, he could still move pretty well for his age. Now, the thing I said earlier about Drew causing Punk to win the strap match this coming Saturday, that's the finish they did here. Rick Rude just rammed into Wahoo McDaniel, which ended up knocking him into the 4th corner that he needed to touch. And Wahoo wins the whole thing in about 9 minutes.
And, you know, Punk is very into the historical matches and like paying homage, to whomever. So I could totally see this happening at Bash in Berlin. But okay, so can you please explain to me why Hector Guerrero and Baron showed up after to like help Wahoo after he won? Like, did they have like a tie together or like was Wahoo their friend?
I think maybe their Atari glitched backstage. And actually, this whole thing just works like WWE 2K and somebody pushed the circle button for interference and they ran down. It was just 2 randoms. I don't know why.
Okay. I thought I missed something, and you're like the wrestling expert. So I was like, maybe he'll know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. But, and we get that a couple of times on this show, like wrestlers just running out to help the bad guy or the good guy. The locker room cleared out a couple of times on this show.
Like they wanted to get their money's worth out of the talent. Or something.
Yeah. But we go to a backstage interview with the Russians. Ivan Koloff says how they've been outsmarting and outbeating their opponents. Outbeating their opponents. So, yep, different from beating. Crusher Khrushchev's lack of accent reminds us that he is in no way Russian. And he says that if Nikita wins the championship tonight, Crusher demands a title shot. And if Nikita doesn't give him a title shot, then Nikita is a traitor and a coward. So we got some dissension being teased here. I kind of like it amongst the Russians.
Those are fighting words, especially for Russians.
It's like the real breakup of the USSR. It was foretold in wrestling. Wrestling is everything. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It is kind of weird. I always say like the Matrix is collapsing because stuff starts happening at the same time in my wrestling world. And then, sorry, I was just thinking about all this Russian talk in the 80s. What's funny is I just realized, so on Stranger Things, which takes place in the 80s, there's a whole Russian storyline. So It's crazy how the Russians were just such a thing in the 80s.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to Atlanta. Singles match for the NWA Central States Heavyweight Championship, which is that championship that you said this is the last time it's ever going to be seen on a pay-per-view. Now it's Bill Dundee versus Sam Houston, who is the current champion. So we saw Sam Houston on the last Starrcade in 1985 because we went to his elementary school. We already talked about him. Yes, but we haven't seen Bill Dundee before. So let's talk about him. Now, he was born in 1943, World War II time. And he is still alive today at the age of 80. Super cool.
Nice.
But he just had his last match in 2019. So what, when he was like 75 in Knoxville, Tennessee? That's insane. That's crazy. So he's the father of wrestler Jamie Dundee and father-in-law of Bobby Eaton, who we will see on this show. So as a teenager, he worked as a trapeze artist. How cool is that?
Makes me love him automatically. I love circus folk.
Me too. Like, how cool is that? In the early 90s, WCW, he worked as a manager for Steven Regal, who is known to modern fans as William Regal.
Oh, man in the mask.
I love William Regal so much. Like, I think he's the coolest thing on the planet.
Yeah, no, like I want to be friends with William Regal just so he can give me life advice with that voice. He's great.
Absolutely. So this title is being defended here because of the Central States Wrestling buyout. And then I guess because they sell it after the pay-per-view, that's why we're never going to see it again. So right away, I'm just like, boo, he's from Australia, because I'm mad at Australia right now. This whole Texan versus Australia is a little too real for me after this trip, because I felt like Australia was just trying to kick my butt the whole time, and I'm this Texan just fighting back.
So this entrance jacket that Bill Dundee is wearing, it's got all these like different colored sequins all over them. I'm not even kidding here. I'm not trying to make a joke. I am almost 100% sure that I have seen the Fabulous Moolah wear that same exact jacket. Like, I need to go image searching for, if we find it, I will be sure that we tweet it. But I swear he stole the same jacket that Fabulous Moolah had.
I was about to say, please go find that, because I would love to see it. I'd be very curious.
Yeah.
So, funniest moment ever during this match. I think maybe this is why I became such a Bill Dundee fan, which this moment kind of outed him as not being Australian because he didn't have an accent. But the ref gets on to Bill for pulling Sam Houston's hair. And so he's pointing his index finger at Bill saying, like, don't be pulling his hair. And Bill looks at him and says, I ain't pulling that finger. And he definitely didn't have an Australian accent, but it was still so funny. And the thing is, I don't think I would have caught it, but my subtitles were still on my TV because I had forgotten to take them off. So he goes, I ain't pulling that finger.
So do dads still do that to their kids? Because like, I can remember our dad telling me to pull his finger and he would fart. And personally, I thought that it was actually, as a kid, actually connected. Like,
Really?
it's a thing that would happen. So I would like sit there and I'd like start pulling my finger and I wouldn't fart. And I'd be like, how did he do that? That's so cool. Maybe I got to be a grown up. It still doesn't work.
He wouldn't fart in front of me, so he never did that. Like, I think both him and our grandpa were very like conscious of their gas around females, and so he never farted in front of me, so he never did the pull my finger. But we need to keep the pull my finger thing alive. I think
we do.
I mean, I could do it to like our nephew and niece, but like, that's the thing is, I don't have that much control. Like, it's like, oh, got a fart, it happened. I can't hold it in and wait for a finger pull. Come on now. Well, okay, so fast forward in the match.
Wait, we got to teach him that, and we got to teach him Fuji.
Eat it.
Nanners.
Nanners. So, question. So later on, Bill Dundee is in a headlock, like he's between like Sam Houston's legs, and he is having a lengthy conversation with the ref. Did something happen there? Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did. I was thinking maybe they were just talking over spots or time, one of the two. Because that's another way that wrestlers will communicate, is they'll tell something to the ref, who will then tell it to the other wrestlers. So that's probably a little bit of what was happening there.
Okay, it just seemed like it went on for a long time, and it was like full sentences, not like little phrases.
Yeah, well, and a lot of stuff in this match seemed to take a long time. I mean, these guys, they had the ability to move really fast, but a lot of this match was very slow and was in submission holds. And I kind of feel like the crowd wasn't really feeling this one.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially on the crowd. But what was weird is I was really feeling this match. I don't know why. Maybe just after that finger pull moment, I just was really invested because I thought he was funny. I don't know, but I did see Bill Dundee trying to call like a timeout. Like he made his hands like a T. He was like, timeout. Like, I've never seen that before. Does that work?
I remember Ric Flair doing that a lot. Like when he'd be begging off in the corner, he'd be like, no, and he'd, do that sort of thing. So yeah, I wish it would. Can you imagine if like they had more football rules in wrestling? Like there were timeouts, there was a penalty flag, there was a challenge flag.
We'd never get through a match ever.
Yeah,
like
right.
How we can't get through
we barely get through a football game. But
hey, jinx. Well, guess what, Justin? Buttcrack alert number 3. Butt showing action.
Split and a beauty.
It was kind of beautiful because it was on Sam Houston's butt. So his Sam Houston's trunks got pulled down, and we definitely see that crack.
Deep in the fart of Texas.
The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the fart of Texas. That's incredible. So
we're 12.
I know. I'm like, we've talked about so much farting in this match. Okay, I'll get to it. Okay, I'm here. Dundee took off Sam Houston's boot and whacked him with it. And just when we're all mad, we see that the ref caught him. And so he declared Sam Houston the winner. Good for him.
Finally.
Sam Houston won by DQ and retained that championship in about 10 minutes. So there we go. Good guy wins.
Yeah, I mean, the match, it just, I don't know. To me, it seemed very impromptu, which could be a good thing. But it seemed like it was too much called in the ring, like not in a good way, more like a scrambling to come up with the next spot kind of way. I don't know. I wasn't feeling this one.
Why do you think that is? I mean, obviously they know they're on a pay-per-view. It's coming up. So like, why do you think they chose to do it that way rather than plan it out a little more?
Well, back then, a lot of stuff was called in the ring. I mean, that was like the measure of a good worker, was being able to call a whole match right there in the ring. And so I don't know, maybe they were just unfamiliar with each other. Maybe their time got cut halfway through the match. I don't know, but it didn't seem very well put together, this one.
Well, I still liked it because Texas won over Australia. We win. He got my revenge.
Let's go now to a specialty match of sorts. It is a hair versus hair match from Greensboro. The Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, versus Paul Jones. We've seen both of these guys on Starrcade. Jimmy Valiant last year in 1985. Paul Jones had his last match on there in 1984. And we saw this same exact match back in 1984. It wasn't a hair versus hair match, but it was Jimmy Valiant versus Paul Jones.
It was Jimmy Valiant, not Johnny.
Yes. No,
Jimmy.
Johnny Valiant is somebody else. So get that straight. And get your Garvins straight as well, because there's two of those on this show.
Why is everyone related to each other? Gosh dang, like all these white men look the same. I can't help it. So Manny Fernandez gets forced into that cage. He gets chopped into the cage and hung above the ring. I thought that was so much fun. He's just like a caged animal, like having to watch from above.
but he gets hung up. They're raising the cage that he's in, and he's like moving around and like jumping up and down, which freaked me out. I was like, dude, like the moment it swung 1 inch, I would have been like soiling myself.
I had the exact same thought. He was like jumping and I was like, oh, don't do that. Because A, I'm not confident in the mechanism holding the cage, but also it was just like, ooh, maybe it's just because I don't like heights. I would want to be as still as possible up there.
Yeah,
totally. Well, okay, question. And I didn't notice this in 84. Why does Paul Jones look just like Tom Savini? The master of horror makeup. He looks just like Tom Savini.
He kind of does. At the time, I was thinking Geraldo Rivera, but Tom Savini might be a better pull there. I'm not sure. Yeah. The referee for this match is Earl Hebner. So Earl is in NWA, and his twin brother Dave has made the jump over to WWF at this time. We just saw him on WrestleMania earlier this year. Kind of crazy that they're split like that between the two companies.
That is crazy. And also on one of my podcasts this week, they talked about Earl Hebner possibly going into the Hall of Fame this year. And they were saying how Bret Hart should give it to him because they have squashed whatever beef they have. And I'm like, what beef did they have? But I guess we'll get to that at a much later date in our pay-per-view timeline. But
yes.
You know, this whole hair versus hair match, like head shaving was such a thing back then. And the little kid in me so badly wanted to see Paul Jones win so that Big Mama would have to get her head shaved. And like, why is it so much funnier when it's a girl? And like, she should have taken one for the team, because that, like, shaving her head on national TV, I'm like, that's how you get over WrestleMania. That's how you do it.
Well, and that's why Jimmy Valiant's hair was short here, because Paul Jones had shaved off his hair a few months before, after an attack or something. So he put Big Mama's hair on the line here against Paul Jones' hair. And that's why you see, you don't see that long ponytail on the Boogie Woogie Man here.
I still think it should have been Big Mama. So, okay, in the match later on, Paul takes something out, and like, it drives me nuts on NWA because they never tell you or show you even exactly what it is. He's just holding something. I'm like, is that a shank? Like, it looks like a box cutter with like bandage wrap around it. Like, I couldn't tell. What was that?
Yeah, I think it was brass knuckles that were wrapped up in tape. I mean, it was definitely white.
Yeah.
But I think it was brass knuckles, because he hits Jimmy Valiant, who goes down, but then like during the pin, Jimmy gets his foot on the rope. So Paul gets those brass knuckles out again and then hits Jimmy again, but now Jimmy kicks out of a pin. So it's like, what do I got to do? And now Jimmy's bleeding from the forehead. But then finally, Paul tried to use those knuckles a third time. Jimmy sends him into the corner and the knuckles fly out of Paul Jones' hand. Jimmy picks up those knuckles, uses them, gets the win, just like that.
Dang, and it was a quick win. Totally.
Yeah, it was like a 4-minute match.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't know what that was. And especially because he started bleeding. I was like, is that a box cutter? It's a shank. It's a shank. But dude, after the match, they're like, we're strapped for time. Let's get to the shaving. Let's do it as fast as possible.
Yeah, they got those electric clippers just immediately.
I know. And Big Mama, she's picking up the clumps of the sweaty hair and like throwing them in the air like she just don't care. Ew.
Yeah. Yeah. Like making it rain hair.
Yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah. And I can't imagine, like, as a guy who shaves his head with electric clippers, like shearing all of that off when it's all wet and sweaty. Like, it was probably less cutting it and more pulling it out.
Ow.
Like, it must have hurt so bad. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and especially because like clippers back then probably weren't as like sharp and awesome as they are now. But okay, another weird interference that you're probably not going to know why. Rick Rude randomly shows up and he comes to attack Jimmy after the match. Like, why? Like, why are we seeing all this random interference?
Am I making it up, or for Rick Rude's match, did Paul Jones walk him out to the ring? I feel like Paul Jones was his manager for that match. So
you're right.
Maybe he was running out to save his manager.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't save him. He was too late.
No, but then after that, Manny Fernandez is let out of the cage, and he and Rick Rude hit a double DDT on Jimmy Valiant onto a chair. And they actually sold this really well. Like, it wasn't, oh no, he's at the chair and now we're going to go do something else. Like, they stayed on this for a couple solid minutes, and it made me think, is Jimmy like actually not okay? Because they stayed with it. They didn't rush it or anything. Finally, Jimmy rolls out of the ring and gets to his feet, but it was really well done here, I thought.
Yeah, I had the same thought. I was like, is he okay? Because in modern day, I would know if they're staying on him, that means he is okay. And they would cut away if he wasn't. But I didn't know what like the protocol was back then. And especially, I mean, obviously they don't seem to be as well versed in camera work and communication with that kind of thing back then. So yeah, I really questioned if he was okay or not. Yeah.
Well, now we go to a thing that is unique.
Oh God, is it the thing, the bunkhouse thing?
Yeah, the bunkhouse thing.
Oh Lord, tell the people.
So we the next shot that we get is a shot of a campfire. Okay, and it kind of zooms out, and sitting there is Nelson Royal, the wrestler who we saw earlier in the night, and he is explaining the story of a match called the Bunkhouse Stampede. For those who don't know, it's basically a battle royal where you could bring weapons. That's mainly what it was. But boy, was this weird, because he pours a cup of coffee, okay, and he sets it down next to him on like this tree stump or something. And then a hand from off camera reaches in and grabs it. We never see like who or why. There's only one person in this shot, and it is Nelson Royal. What was this?
I don't know, Justin. I was because he's like dressed as a cowboy, which now I know if he had that boot store, he was trying to promote his own crap. But I was so confused on what was happening. I thought it was like an old school commercial for like Folgers at first. And then I was like, did I hit the button on my remote and I like changed channels? Like, what is this? I was so confused. In the hand, oh my God, I saw the hand come and take the coffee. And I was like, what the hell? And I'm thinking, okay, that had to be intentional because say he poured the cup of coffee and set it down. It's not like it was in danger of getting knocked over and production had to grab it. Like, what was that hand? Who was that, Justin?
I don't know. Like, it was so, and then it happened again at the end. Like the hand came back in with the cup and it was like, so is he asking for a refill? Like what is happening here?
And there's this country music playing the whole time, this little ding, 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 while he's talking.
Yeah. And, you know, and while he's talking, like they're showing shots from the previous bunkhouse stampede, which was not televised. They weren't televised until like the final one in like 1988 or so. And overall, like I like the idea of this. Like it was cheesy the way it was done, but it was a creative way to explain the rules of this match. And of course, we won't see that match for a while, but I kind of liked it. It was probably used just to hype up tickets for an upcoming few shows, house shows, that sort of thing. But then we go back to the arena where Tony Schiavone says we are taking a brief intermission, which thank God was cut from the streaming version.
Lord,
and
thank you.
I would just like to think that if they kept the intermissions in these, that we would take an intermission right here on this show. Like we would just take 15 minutes to just sit here and drink some coffee and
I'd come on your screen and take your coffee away, my hand out of the camera.
Check our phones, that sort of thing.
And it's crazy because they have multiple intermissions during the show, like lots of them. And so I can't imagine how long the live show was.
Well, after the intermission, we get a package about the Crockett Cup, which is a tag team tournament that modern day NWA, owned by Billy Corgan, still holds. So that's kind of a cool little traditional thing. Now, the guy introducing these video packages is Bob Taylor, and he's in front of some wall of TV equipment that they call Starrcade control. This guy's face does not move when he talks. It's like, you ever watch like a local car commercial? Like for a local car dealership, and it's always the owner of the place or one of the salesmen, and they could have some inflection in their voice. Their face doesn't move. It's like a trope.
It's because they need to hire someone who's good at talking on camera, not just use one of their employees that wants to be on like local TV. Like
I would just like to throw out justintate.com is a thing. And if you just want me for your car commercial, I'll do it. I work cheap. I'll take in a Isuzu.
And a Isuzu? Do they even make Isuzus anymore? Is that even a thing?
I don't know, but I'll take one. Just saying. Let's go to Atlanta for a street fight.
Yes, the Louisville street fight in Atlanta, random, but it's Big Bubba Rogers versus Ronnie Garvin. Not to get that confused, but Big Bubba Rogers, we've never seen him before. So he was born in 1963, but he died at the young age of 41 in just 2004. So man, he
crazy.
I know. He debuted in 1985 and he had his last match the same year he died, 2004, in Tokyo, Japan. So I wonder what happened. Kind of want to look that up. But obviously, because I was looking at him and I was like, I know this guy. Can't figure out how I know this guy. He is better known to most fans as the Big Boss Man. So there yes, he was a former corrections officer in Cobb County, Georgia. And I feel like I've seen Cobb County on like these prison shows that I watch on TV. Like that sounds very familiar. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2016. So there you go. Big Boss Man. That makes so much more sense to me because it was killing me how I knew that guy. Ronnie Garvin, we last saw him on NWA Starrcade in 1985 as Miss Atlanta Lively. That weird match.
One of your favorite matches of all time, right?
I mean, I just don't understand it, Justin. I don't, but anyway.
Well, it's a street fight that we're doing here. So naturally, Garvin is wearing jeans because that's just, what if real street fights couldn't start unless everybody was wearing the proper attire? Like that was a rule of street fighting. I don't know. I don't know if those boots are legal
Well, I know a lot of the street fights I see, like they get posted on Facebook. It's the buttcrack siren because all these guys' pants are falling off. Well, Ron in this match, he was going to personally one up WrestleMania too because he took a soda and threw it in Big Bubba's face, and the crowd loved that, man. Like, I mean, Bob Orton was like, "I'm going to throw some water on some people," so of course Ronnie's like, "Oh, we're going to up this to soda." So
yeah. That's what I would do in a street fight. It would be my version of pocket sand. I would just have like a pocket soda and just
pocket soda. That would be you. Well, Ron Garvin was wearing this tan leather weight belt, and I kept thinking he was wearing a crop top. Like, and he just had a really tan belly.
Well, the crop top was still in his Miss Atlanta Lively suitcase. You know, he switched them out.
But so, like, I get that this is a street fight, but it literally looks like two drunk guys fighting at a bar, like not a pro wrestling match. Like they're just kind of hugging all over and like, you know, like it didn't really look like the professional wrestling.
But and you know, it sounds mean, but I don't mean it that way. Because of Big Bubba's size, it's very believable that he was truly exhausted after all this. I mean, he's a big guy and he could do like crazy things for such a big guy. But you watch him in his face and his sweat, and he's turning red, and it made it that much more believable to me.
That's true, but also like Wahoo's not a trim guy, and like he still, you know, I mean, I've seen other big guys, but anyway, my favorite part of the whole pay-per-view happened in this match, Justin. So like at one point, Bubba is holding Ron, and Ron has his legs wrapped around Bubba, and they are just
like in a bear hug.
Yes, but like they're just like staring into each other's eyes for a good 10 seconds, and all I could hear is like the Titanic music playing in my head, like, "Oh, Bubba, I'll never let you go, Bubba. I love you, Bubba." And then Bubba's just like blah 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 blah, sinks down. Like it was so romantic.
I was touched. I watched it 4 times, just like a teenage girl going to see Titanic in the movie theaters.
There you go.
They should have gone up to the scaffolding. You jump, I jump. Remember? You know.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the ref got knocked out via Cornette's golden tennis racket, but he just popped right back up and started the count. So it was kind of like, I thought it was a secondary ref at first. And I was like, wait, that's the same guy. And so what was the point of that? I mean, he got knocked out and I was like, oh crap, we don't have our, oh, yep, we do. He's right there.
I guess Cornette didn't load it right that night or something. Who knows?
I guess not. But yeah, they're both laying on the ground. And so it becomes whoever stands up first is the winner of the match. And so that was so fun, but it was so frustrating at once because I was like, someone stand up. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah, I had never seen a match end like that before. And it made it all seem so much more urgent. You know, it was like, one of you, hurry, stand, hurry. Who's going to be? You know, that was a lot of fun. And the crowd was, I wondered if the crowd knew that stipulation had been put into place. They seemed to know because all of a sudden they were cheering a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, that's a good point because I don't think I would have known if I were just sitting there watching live unless they said it like over a microphone and we didn't hear it. But at one point, the ref, he like shoved Cornette out of the ring. And from that moment, like, I was like, Cornette probably said, fine, you don't get to sleep with my wife later. Ayo, wha-bam, wham. But anyway, so Ron ends up getting on his feet first. However, Bubba distracts the ref and Cornette, he hits Ron down with that tennis racket and Bubba gets up getting the win in 11 minutes and 50 seconds. Ooh, I love when the heel wins, but I hate it too.
Yeah, no, that was fun. And I really liked that ending. And once they both kind of started to teeter and totter up, it got really exciting. I liked that one a lot. I really did.
Me too. I wish they'd do something like that, you know, now because it's just different.
Yeah. Well, we keep the interesting matches going. It's a first blood match from Greensboro for the NWA World Television Championship. The champion, Dusty Rhodes, versus Tully Blanchard. Now, we've both seen these guys plenty on Starrcade as recently as the last Starrcade in 1985. And these two guys, they're going to put on a banger.
Does Tully look different to you? Like way beefier or like younger? This did not look like Tully to me. It looked like he had a glow up.
Yeah, no, he did look different, and I don't know what it was. Maybe he did put on some mass or something, but when he first came out, I was like, there's something different about him. Yeah, I noticed that too.
He almost looked like younger, healthier. I don't know. He just looked different.
I don't know. Now today, we see these shots on WWE a lot, but this is the first time that we've seen it on one of our pay-per-views. The camera shows the dressing room door, and then we see Dusty come out of the dressing room, and the camera follows him all the way to the entrance. And it was interesting because there was like nobody else in any of the shots backstage. You would think like they would dress it up with some other wrestlers or some crew guys, but it was just Dusty in this long, empty hallway. Kind of an interesting shot. And I feel like that was maybe even a choice. Like he was all alone in this.
I thought it was definitely intentional. And it's just funny because everyone lately has been like, oh my God, WWE with these incredible shots. And I'm like, yo, they did it in 86. Proof. Bam. Yeah, definitely. Well, Dusty, he comes out and he's got Tully written in black in like the shaved blonde hairline. And I just thought it was kind of a cool little emo thing, you know, like he just needed some bangs to be able to like flip out of his face all emo. But like,
well, if you noticed, he had Tully written on this side, but then he had it backward over here. So it said, you lut.
Oh, it did?
Did you notice that?
No, I didn't even notice that. That's funny.
Yeah. But it's a first blood match. So whoever bleeds first loses. So J.J. Dillon, who's managing Tully Blanchard, because the Four Horsemen are a thing at this time. J.J. is their manager. So he tries to get the upper hand by putting headgear on Tully Blanchard's head so he can't bleed.
What a nerd.
Referee says, no, you can't do that. So then J.J. Dillon tries to rub Vaseline on Tully's head. Referee says, no, you can't do that. So Dusty gets fed up with all this rigmarole. It gives the big elbow to J.J. Dillon, making him bleed. And it's like just this nice little subtle storytelling that now we're established. Just one shot from Dusty's elbow can make Tully bleed and lose this match. I loved that.
I loved it too. Yeah. And I was questioning. I'm like, well, dang, did we not get the match? Like, does that count?
Well, and then even further storytelling in this match, Tully and Dusty, they're very careful to avoid any shots in the head. They're like shrinking away from any punches or shots to the head, making sure they don't bleed. It was just, I loved this. It was so smart.
I really noticed that. And even like beyond storytelling, they realize, oh, if I make you bleed on accident, like, I screw up the whole match. And so like, there you go. But I did notice in this match, this was the second match in a row where they like took out the ref and it didn't really matter because it ended up kind of mattering toward the end of this match. But I think it was Dusty that took out the ref. And it's like, well, if they're at my head, I'm thinking at that point, well, if they start bleeding, they're not going to stop bleeding by the time the ref is back. But it kind of happens.
Yeah, and it was actually it was two ref bumps in this match, which is when you knew like, all right, something's going down here. I don't like it.
Well, oh my God, Dusty was making me laugh. He was trolling Tully so hard. He was like sitting back in the ring with his arms crossed. He was doing his little walk. He was dancing. And like, I would love to see Cody do some of this because I know he's like the all-American boy on his best behavior right now, but like I would love to see Cody kind of not loosen up, but have some fun the way Dusty did because obviously, I mean, it's his son. Like it would be appreciated and I think it'd be like a good honor.
Yeah, like even just some of those little dances or hand motions that Dusty would do, you know, and you almost can't do them without doing the Dusty voice, you know, you know, come on, boy, come on, show me what you got, baby, you know.
Exactly.
But on the second ref bump, Dusty, he's pounding away at Tully's head and Tully gets busted open straight up. And then Tully rolls over to J.J. Dillon, who wipes his face off with the towel. And so he's getting all the blood off. Tully comes back with a roll full of coins, nails Dusty right in the head with him. Dusty starts bleeding. Well, of course, that's when the referee wakes up, sees Dusty's blood, and oh my God, Earl Hebner was killing me here because he wakes up and he touches Dusty's head that he sees covered in blood and then looks at his own fingers and then touches Dusty's head again and looks at his own fingers like, is that blood? And it's like, what did you think? Do you think that he fell in a Slurpee machine? Like, yeah, it's freaking blood, dipshit. Like, call for the bell. And so he calls for the bell. Tully Blanchard wins the match and the television championship in about 7.5 minutes.
That dang cheater. that cheater.
Yeah.
But also,
Did
I'm
you like this one? I thought it was a lot of fun.
oh yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. And I also, it kind of like made me realize the importance of Vaseline in MMA because, especially like a title match in MMA or UFC, they have to go 5 rounds and sometimes they get busted open. And I'm always like, man, can Vaseline really work that well? But I guess it does. Because
Yeah.
and I also wondered if they used fake blood in this match because it had to be so controlled, like if it was like a blood pack or not. But it looked pretty good either way.
Yeah. Well, Tully, it was really good too, because he makes sure to get out of there like immediately and put a towel over his head before the referee could see that he was bleeding too. So it was just all very smart. The story of the match it worked for me very well. But now we go to really the match that this whole pay-per-view is named after, Starrcade 86, the Night of the Skywalkers. Tell them why, Michelle.
Well, it's the scaffold tag team match in Atlanta, the Midnight Express versus the Road Warriors. So Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, Midnight Express, we saw both of them on NWA Starrcade 1985. So don't really need to talk about them, but we've got Road Warrior Animal and Road Warrior Hawk. So Animal was born in 1960 and he died at the age of 60 in 2020. He debuted the year you were born, 1982, and his last match was just in 2012 on SmackDown in San Diego. So very cool. He trained with his tag team, Road Warrior Hawk, Rick Rude, and Crusher Khrushchev. I said it right, finally. His extended wrestling family, this is kind of cool. His brother is John Laurinaitis. I know. And the Terminator. And so that makes his step nieces, Brie Bella and Nikki Bella, and his step nephew-in-law, Bryan Danielson. There we go. Did you get
I think when you have to put that many qualifiers in front of it, they're just called an acquaintance. Like,
no, it's all incestuous in the wrestling world, Justin. We have to call it out. Along with Hawk and manager Paul Ellerling, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011, the WWE Hall of Fame in 2011. So his partner, Road Warrior Hawk, he was born in 57 and he died at just the age of 46 in 2003. Now he debuted in 1983 and had his last match in 2003 at just an indie show in Jackson, Missouri? Minnesota. Yeah. I get all of the M states confused. Much the same story as Animal. He grew up in Minnesota. There you go. I should have just kept reading. And he actually left Animal to go to Japan for a little bit in the early 90s, but they ended up reuniting after a brief split. So there you go. I know. Isn't that sweet? In the early 2000s, he started popping up at Christian wrestling events put on by Nikita Koloff and Ted who?
DiBiase.
I don't know who that is, Justin.
The $1 Million Man.
Oh, okay.
Ted
yes,
DiBiase.
I do. I know who that is. Never mind.
Yeah.
But
that was a thing in the early 2000s, was like these Christian wrestling events started popping up.
I was about to ask you.
It was like, yeah, like I never went to one, obviously, but like good would triumph over evil, and like they would talk about like the beauty of God and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of times it was like these born again wrestlers who would pop up there. And yeah, it was an odd thing. I mean, I'm a big fan of overextended metaphors, and this is a very overextended metaphor for good and evil.
I'm just very baffled by this. And like, this is probably going to get me some heat. I don't care. But I always feel like, like Christian wrestling, it's kind of like Christian rappers where I'm like, are you not good enough to make it in the real one? So you're going to put Christian and become like the most popular Christian rapper? Like,
right.
It's just kind of strange, man. But let's get into the match.
Yeah. Well, they broke my heart here, and I understand why they had to do it, but they dubbed over the Midnight Express's theme music.
They did.
Oh, now I understand why. It's a rights thing, but the Midnight Express, they would use the theme from the movie Midnight Express, which was also the theme song to something that you and I have loved for decades, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. If you don't know the song, look it up. It's at it just gives me
so
chills.
Good.
And actually, modern fans of AEW, the song that FTR comes out to now, it's a direct ripoff of that song because they were big fans of the Midnight Express. And so, it killed me not to hear that song.
I know. I was real excited about it, and then it didn't happen.
And we should tell people the whole idea of this match isn't to pin your opponent. You have to throw both members of the other team off of this scaffold that is about, what would you say, about 20 feet off the ring?
20, yeah. I would
15
guess.
to 20, something like that.
Yeah, well, right away, the Road Warriors, they just go straight up to climbing up the scaffold, and it broke, like, as soon as they get up there, and, like, a whole piece just comes off, and then the Road Warrior, I don't remember if it was Hawk or Animal, just kind of tosses it to the side. And I'm like, at this point, like, they had to question the structure, or, like, the safety of the structure, you know?
Yeah, no, it looked rickety. And when that piece broke off, I was like, oh, Lord, like this is just got nightmare written all over it. Now, the Road Warriors have their manager, Paul Ellering, on the outside. Again, a note for modern fans. You can now see Paul Ellering almost every Monday on Monday Night Raw as the manager of the Final Testament, Karrion Kross and Scarlett and the Authors of Pain.
So cool. I love that he's still involved. Now, me personally, I would hate doing this match. We kind of talked about it with like Manny Fernandez.
That's his version of Miss Atlanta Lively, Fanny Fernandez.
That's fantastic. Like, I just looking at them made me uncomfortable because I don't like heights at all, and my knees would just start shaking once I got up there. I'd freeze.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy thing that I'm sure that out of these four guys, there's at least one who did not like heights, but a good payoff will make you do a lot of things.
Yeah, well, like, this doesn't look safe at all. Like, does this look safe to you? Like,
No.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Because, like, not even just like how sound the structure is, but like the whole match, I'm like, this does not look safe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't handle it.
Well, and that might be why they were stalling so much in the beginning, because it took a long time to get the match started. Like the Road Warriors were up there forever while the Midnight Express was like down in the ring. And then they're slowly getting up there, but they're acting like they're afraid of heights, which is just good heel work. But seriously, like, even though they look like they were unsure if this legit was a good idea, at some point you got to say, guys, go. My God, it took a while.
Yeah, I noticed that. It was like a good 5 minutes from like the end of the entrances to the beginning of the match. I was wondering what was going on. Definitely. Yeah. I was like, is this an intermission that they didn't announce? They didn't take out a peacock? Well, eventually all four men are hanging from like the underside of the scaffold. Like they're about to have like a chicken fight on the monkey bars. And finally, both members of the Midnight Express drop to the ring and the match is over in just 7 minutes.
Oh, boy. I was not, I don't envy them. That just to let go of that bar must have just been like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Yeah, it looked terrifying. But
I have thoughts about this whole match, but I'll save it till the end when we talk about our overall thoughts of the pay-per-view, because it kind of ties in. But
okay.
Yes.
Well, after the match, Jim Cornette, who's managing the Midnight Express, he gets chased up the scaffold by the Road Warriors. And so with nowhere to go up there, he hangs from the bottom as well. Now, what was supposed to happen was when Cornette let go and dropped down, Big Bubba Rogers was supposed to catch him. But for some reason, Big Bubba was there, but didn't catch him. And so Jim Cornette drops to the ring and he legitimately blew out his knees when he hit the mat. And in fact, you can even hear him tell Bubba, my right knee. And knowing that and watching him hit the mat was just cringe.
Yeah, it made me, it made my knees hurt watching it because I knew it was coming. So I was watching for it. And what's crazy to me is Jim Cornette is telling Big Bubba, like, my knees. And Big Bubba kind of helps him out of the ring, but then he's walking. And I'm like, someone carry this man. Like, listen to what he's saying. Like, what the hell? Like, he's having to walk on this? Like, yeah. I don't know. Big Bubba was in La La Land or something when that happened.
Apparently so. Just out there basking in the love of the crowd. Well, the hate of the crowd, really, at that time.
Exactly. So after the match, we get a highlight reel from the Great American Bash, which also had head shaving, because head shaving was a thing. I remember, like, if you got perfect attendance back in like the 90s, you'd get your name in a hat and they draw it and you got to shave the principal's head. Did y'all not do that at school at Sam Houston Elementary?
The closest thing we had was that our principal would kiss a pig And so they brought an actual pig and he kissed it on the lips.
Okay, like I would do that any day. Like, why is that a big thing? I love pigs.
That's what we got. But like, it was such like a funny thing or whatever that the news actually came and covered it.
Oh, well, we did grow up in a kind of small town back then.
Yeah.
Well, every time I hear JCP, aka like Jim Crockett Productions, I just think of JC Penney. Like every time. And so it's like brought to you by JC Penney. I don't know. That was just a random thought I had. But okay, we get the credits of the whole show. It's like mid to late show. We've still got a few matches left, and we have the credits, which is like 2 minutes. What?
Yeah. I don't know why they do this here. My only guess is that because the next match is a steel cage match, they figured, okay, a little bit more time to build the steel cage for this one, even though they had the entire last match to do that. The only real notable thing in the credits here was seeing Dusty Rhodes listed as the senior producer, but he's listed under his real name, which back then, pre-internet days, most fans wouldn't have known who that was. So it was a little sneaky thing they did there.
What was his real name?
Virgil Runnels.
I knew it was Runnels. I didn't know what the Virgil was, but yeah, I'd probably change mine too.
Which we'll talk about more when we get a little bit further in our journey here, because there's some back and forth. Anyway, nothing for now. We go to a steel cage match, as I just mentioned. It's the last match from Greensboro on this show. It was the main event for the Greensboro section, and it is for the NWA World Tag Team Championship, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew versus the Rock and Roll Express, our NWA World Tag Team Champions. We saw all these guys on last year's Starrcade, 1985, so no real bio to go through. If you want to know more about them, go back to our 1985 Starrcade episode. There's some good stuff there. Now, as usual, Rock and Roll Express comes out and the women go absolutely banana.
Banana? Not bananas, just banana?
I'm saying like Pat Patterson, banana.
Yeah, they did. And that's the thing is it's kind of like the Russians. I get Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express. Everyone's an express, the Jurassic Express. I don't know. But the lights were so cool from these entrances all the way into the match. The aesthetic, which was like dark with like beams of random, like colorful light. The only like thing I can describe this as is, do you remember? I think we had it on VHS, and maybe we even went live when it came through town. It was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a concert. And there was and it was like a VHS that we had, and that was the lighting of the whole show. Yeah, and it also
we did have that VHS, and they would sing, but there was like a story to the concert too. Like Shredder was trying to steal all the music from the world.
Yeah.
And
it's the same.
You're right. We did go to it because it went on tour when we were kids, and so we did go to it. Yeah.
It's also the exact same lighting as the Vanilla Ice scene in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze. So it was like a whole music aesthetic back then. So I guess that's why. But I just wanted to bring up that random little piece of nostalgia because I loved that VHS. I bet we could find that on YouTube and watch it.
I'm pretty sure it's out there. I'm pretty sure. You know, and it's still so weird talking about this match, like to watch the two teams tagging in and out in a cage match. Like we saw that last year, but I guess it's supposed to back then. It's supposed to be a normal match that's just trying to keep other people out and keep these two teams in. But we're just so used to cage matches now just being a free for all with no rules. It's still a little bit jarring to see them tagging in and out.
Yeah, it's definitely weird, and it's a sign of the times because back then they were like, we want to keep people out, we put a cage. Now it's like in 2024, it's like, you won't get paid. Your contract will be, so people just stay out. You just threaten them with money or something like that.
Yeah.
At one point, actually, it was at multiple points during this match, the audience started chanting something, and I was like, what are they saying? And I thought they were saying RKO, RKO. And I was like, why are they so like for that? And then it finally occurred to me they were saying rock and roll.
Rock and roll. But there's a question for you. Do kids these days say rock and roll? Like do they even know the term rock and roll?
I think if they know it, they think of like very old school music being rock and roll. Like when I even hear that, I think of like our grandpa and like Elvis and like
Elvis. Yeah.
Like musicians from way back then. Like I don't even think of like Aerosmith or even of the actual rock and roll people I listen to now. So
Right. You just think rock for them.
yeah, how weird.
Yeah.
Well, I know the crowd was going absolutely insane for this match.
Yeah. Yeah, they were. They were going nuts, which is interesting because I was starting, while watching this, I was starting to get a little bit passive watching this. And it wasn't like it was a bad match or something. I think
agree.
the length of the show was starting to really take its toll on me. But, whenever that happens, I put myself into the mindset of a wrestling fan back then. Now this would be with as popular as the Rock and Roll Express were, this would be like Taylor Swift going against like Roseanne Barr or something.
No.
Like,
how dare you call the Andersons Roseanne?
It's just, I don't know. It wasn't for me in 2024, but I'm sure if I would have been watching this in 1986, I would have been on the edge of my seat.
That's fair. Cause I agree with you. I felt like you're nice in saying you felt a little passive. I got a little bored during this match, and it wasn't because they were doing a bad job. I really think it was because I split this pay-per-view up over like 3 days, and I think at this point it just started feeling long, and I was like, okay, this match should almost be over, and then there's like 10 more minutes. But that's no hate on them. They didn't do anything wrong. It was just my own personal attention span.
By the way, Arn Anderson, 28 years old in this match. Yeah.
Oh.
Just think about that for a second. Ricky Morton, he was in the match for a long time without getting a tag. Just like that match we talked about earlier. It was like, okay, how long can we watch them beat down Ricky Morton? And Rock and Roll Express, they're always known for these hot tag situations. They were masters of getting the hot tag. But I was really wondering like how long they were going to keep that going. And it got a little bit monotonous watching Ricky Morton getting his ass kicked for that long.
Agreed. Fully. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, finally, Ole Anderson, he picks up Ricky Morton for a body slam, but Robert Gibson drop kicks him, causing Ricky to fall on top of Ole Anderson for the pin. And they win and retain their championship in just over 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I think the guy that rings the bell at the end fell asleep because it was very delayed from when after the pin happened, because I was like, okay, he pinned him. The match is over. But I never heard the bell. And I was like, is it going to keep going? And then ding, ding, ding. Yeah. And I was like, oh, gosh, he fell asleep too.
Yeah, who knows what was going on. But after that match, it's almost time for the main event. But then we get some weirdness.
This was way weirder. Okay, the cowboy coffee thing earlier, the Folgers commercial, that was fun. This one just got uncomfortable, and I feel like it was probably kind of a buzzkill for everyone watching at the time. It was like a music video.
Yeah, it was a music. And to be fair, I don't know that this is the same song that was played at the time.
Oh, that would be helpful. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But this song that's played, if you watched it on Peacock, is like this, it's like this country song, kind of, with like these weird, it's like a country love song. Okay. And you're seeing shots of somebody running down the beach towards a woman who we only see from behind, who looks to be about 70 years old in this shot from behind.
It's like a shot of the back of her head for 20 seconds and she's not moving. It's almost like a picture. Like it doesn't even look like it's a video.
Yeah. And then we finally see who's running towards the camera, and it's Magnum TA. And so that's when you realize that, oh, this is a tribute video, because a few months before this show, Magnum TA had his car accident that ended his career, and he was supposed to be in the main event for this show to go against Ric Flair for the championship, was probably going to beat Ric Flair for the championship. So he finally runs and reaches this woman, who finally turns around and realizes, oh, that's not like some old woman. That's not his mom. This is like a romantic thing. They're like kind of the same age. They like start holding hands and walking down the beach.
This was so strange.
I can't even describe it.
The lyrics, the chorus was like, her life is like a box that's always empty. And I'm like, no, those aren't the words. Her life is like a box of chocolates. That's what I thought he was going to say every freaking time. And like, I love a good video montage. Okay. I think last week's Dynamite, they did a whole video montage for Bryan Danielson and his whole career. And they set it to Time of My Life or Time of Your Life by Green Day. And it was just like, got me in the feels. I was about to cry. I had chills. Like, it was great. I love a video montage. But this one, like, do a video montage of his career with like a song. Why was this like a romantic music video. I'm just so confused.
I can't even imagine that we're missing context here beyond he had to end his career. Like this was just strange. We can't do it justice. It might be on YouTube somewhere by itself. If so, I encourage you to go watch it. Maybe it even has the original song on there still. I don't know. But anyway, that all leads to the main event of the entire show from Atlanta. Michelle, do us the honors.
Yes, it is for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and it is Nikita Koloff versus Ric Flair. We saw both these guys in NWA Starrcade 85, so go back and listen to that episode if you want to hear a little bit more about them. So the original plan for this match had been for Magnum TA to face Ric Flair for the championship. And, you know, we kind of talked about our last episode, Starrcade 85, about how like Magnum TA was like built up for a big run, like Ric Flair level run. But because of his career-ending injuries with that car accident, Nikita Koloff turned face and feuded with Flair to kind of save that. So my first thought when this match started was, I wonder why Ric Flair hadn't jumped ship over to WWF. Because you know they tried. Like Vince totally tried. So I wonder why he stayed. Money? Yeah, I guess they offered him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he was making really good money back then. Maybe Vince could have matched it. I don't know. But I mean, he was making crazy money. Of course, he was also working crazy dates at the time too. He was jet setting all over the world daily. So, maybe he just loved the life he was living, didn't want to give it up. But,
I guess so. Yeah. Well, Nikita dominates the first half big time. He is kicking Ric Flair's butt. And then Flair kind of dominates the second half. And then the last few minutes are just an exciting back and forth. So I thought it was fun. I thought this main event was definitely better than the Hulk Hogan, Baldy match.
King Kong Bundy. Yeah.
King Kong Baldy. But so if we're on a competition, I did enjoy this match more, but there was a very long, obvious shot of Rick cutting himself on the head. Nikita had just rammed his face into the scaffold, and then it shows him on the ground. He's kind of half under the ring apron a little bit, and he's going like this. And I'm like, camera, point anywhere else. Literally anywhere.
Yeah. Well, and they did the same thing to Nikita right around that time as well. He ran into the scaffolding, and it like stays on him while you see his hand magically just rubbing his forehead vigorously. And it was like, guys, there's a crowd you can shoot. There's Ric Flair you can shoot. Like, do anything else.
Literally show Brody Lee in the audience again, anything but this. But Nikita did pin Flair for more than a 3 count, but the ref was knocked out. Don't hate when that happens.
Yeah. But then we get our old friend with the bad hair, Scrappy McGowan. He runs back out. Somehow his hair looked even worse, but he took a ref bump too. And so fortunately, Tommy Young, the first ref, wakes back up and we continue on.
I feel like there were no consequences. Like the refs just got so beat up back then. No consequence. Yeah. It's crazy. Well, the bell rings for a DQ, which actually ended up being a double DQ. But then the entire roster just comes out and chaos ensues. Like some helped Ric Flair to beat up Nikita. Others are just trying to pull them apart. It was chaos. Did you like that ending? I mean, it ended in 20 minutes, and technically Rick did retain his championship because it was a DQ, but with the double DQ, it was just chaos. What'd you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, the pull apart at the end, I mean, they were going after each other. Like, obviously, I knew that they weren't really, but if they were really, that's about what it would look like. It was really well done, that whole pull apart.
Definitely. Now, there was this part. So you know how like Big Bubba didn't catch Cornette earlier? You would think he might have gotten some heat for that, but we have another moment. And I can't confirm this. I don't know. I don't know what the plan was, but just with my little wrestling eyes, at one point, Flair was shoved back really, really hard. And I think Bubba was supposed to catch him because Bubba was standing right there, but instead Rick kind of like tripped, maybe even on Bubba's foot. He kind of tripped and fell backwards and hit the turnbuckle with the back of his head, and it kind of knocked it forward, and it looked painful. Ooh. And I was just thinking, with Big Bubba standing right there, I was like, was he supposed to catch him? Because it didn't look intentional. I
feel like Big Bubba hadn't been trained a whole lot at this point. Like, I mean, he knew the basics, but he was getting by a lot on, he was just a big dude. He's like 6'7", 6'8", and that was enough. But did you notice, like, as soon as the match was over, the people in the crowd bolted. Even during this pull apart, and while the wrestlers were still kind of getting separated, there was tons of red chairs in the background, all of a sudden just empty. Like they wanted to get out of there.
I noticed that. I was like, dang, is parking like, or they just wanted to leave and beat the crowd for the parking lot? I was like, why are they leaving so fast? Because now I feel like we're all like waiting for something else to happen because the big pop always comes at the very end. But man, they were out of there. They were done.
Right.
Well, after the match, we get a highlights reel of the entire night, but it was set to the music, I swear, from the Power Rangers. It was like, and
then Lord Zed came out at the end, and
I was watching Power Rangers while I was typing my notes for this episode, and like it's crazy because Rita, she talks, but the words that you hear do not match her mouth at all, and I never noticed that as a kid. Crazy.
Yeah, like so much of that was just directly ripped from the Japanese version and dubbed or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, tell me what happens after this pay-per-view.
So quite a lot, because we are just, the whole wrestling world is building at this point, largely thanks to WWF, but NWA is holding on there. Don Kernodle, he left the NWA, wrestled in various independent promotions. Jimmy and Ronnie Garvin, they started teaming up to begin a feud with the Midnight Express. Now, Baron von Raschke left the NWA the following year and signed with the WWF to become a manager of the Powers of Pain. Speaking of the Powers of Pain, the Barbarian and the Warlord would form that team in 1987, feuding with the Road Warriors. Crusher Khrushchev, he leaves the NWA shortly after this event because of a payoff dispute. And actually, another thing that happened just a couple of weeks after this event, Rick Rude won the NWA World Tag Team Championship with his partner, Manny Fernandez. But then 4 months later, in April of 1987, Rick Rude left to join the WWF. They're all leaving. Sam Houston, he spent the first few months in 1987 with Bill Watts' UWF before going to the WWF in May.
Who's going to be left other than Ric Flair? It's just going to be Rick wrestling himself.
Yeah. Paul Jones, he spent the next year or so wearing a cowboy hat until his hair grew back after getting it shaved off on this show. After Jim Crockett purchased the UWF, Big Bubba Rogers became the UWF champion until April of 1987. Ronnie Garvin, he began a feud with Ric Flair, even using the Miss Atlanta Lively getup to ambush Flair at one point.
Oh, come on.
And this was followed by Ronnie Garvin defeating Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in September of 1987. What do you think about that?
Is Flair going to get it back before Starrcade 87? That's my first thought. Because I feel like there's no way. Or he will win it back on Starrcade. Like, Ric Flair's their dude, man. That's the Roman Reigns right now. That's how I feel.
We got to see. The Road Warriors won the NWA International Tag Team Championship, which a lot of people haven't heard of. They would hold that for 15 months, but it would eventually just be a retired championship. And I think they were the final champions. In March 1987, Dennis Condrey of the Midnight Express leaves the company without giving notice, and he was eventually replaced in the Midnight Express with Sweet Stan Lane. And speaking of groups, the Four Horsemen continue to terrorize the NWA. Ole Anderson was replaced in 1987 in the Four Horsemen by a young newcomer by the name of Lex Luger.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. Nikita Koloff forms a team with Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors to take on the Four Horsemen, eventually facing off in the first ever War Games match. So if you like the War Games matches you see now, or Blood and Guts that you see on AEW, here's where it all started. And Ric Flair, as previously mentioned, feuded with Ronnie Garvin, eventually losing the championship to him in September. What's your final thoughts on Starrcade 1986?
You know, I thought there were a lot of really good moments. I think they're doing a good enough job holding their own against WWF minus the production side, just because I think as soon as I started watching this pay-per-view, I was like, oh, this looks crusty, like compared to, WrestleMania 2. I thought it was strange. I'm trying to not be super negative. I do think it is very strange that they kept the big, bulky scaffold there the entire time for one 7-minute match that wasn't even the main event. That was kind of a strange choice because it seemed to be kind of in the way. And obviously it wasn't built that well since it was falling apart. So I don't know if they thought that structure was like a spectacle of its own and it needed to be there the whole time. But I'm sure if you were there live, it was kind of an eyesore a little bit. But
I wonder if obstructed view seats were a thing back then.
I don't know, because you couldn't go online and look. You just had to.
I wonder if the box office sold them that way, or the 800 number you'd have to call, or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good question. But no, I didn't hate the pay-per-view. It's definitely starting to feel like WWE is superior. But I think the talent is fine and the talent is good. I thought obviously having the scaffold there the whole time, the whole Skywalker thing, I thought it was just a little. It was like that was their big thing to compete, and maybe it wasn't as big as they thought it would be. Maybe. Yeah. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Overall, much the same. They're definitely holding their own. They are sticking to what they do while still looking at WWF and going, oh, they're stepping things up in production and spectacle and everything. Like we gotta step up on our end as well. They never really went to the lengths that WWF did in the 80s to make it just became such a stark contrast between the two companies. And we saw how it eventually ended. And there would be a lot of up and downs over the next 15, 20 years. But it's going to be a journey. It's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, and what's crazy is just going back to WrestleMania 2, it's crazy because, they had those weird audio issues we talked about in the camera back and forth. But even then, I forgot about it. Watching this, all I remembered was, wow, WrestleMania looked a lot better. Than this visually. But anyway, you get another sound cue because I tried to skip your Wrestle Stats next time. So Justin, hit me with some. There we go. There you go.
So 3 men are tied for the most matches on NWA pay-per-view now at 4 matches each. That's Jimmy Valiant, Ric Flair, and Wahoo McDaniel. Now, only 2 of those men are tied for the most wins at 3 wins each. That's Jimmy Valiant and Ric Flair. As you may have noticed, if you've been sticking with this journey with us, there have been no women's matches so far on NWA pay-per-view. We've seen a couple on WWF, so NWA got to catch up with the women. Now, there are 2 matches that we've now seen twice on NWA pay-per-view. Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair and Jimmy Valiant versus Paul Jones. That means just under 5% of matches on NWA pay-per-views are rematches, and just over 47% of matches on NWA pay-per-views are title matches. So we're going to keep building those stats. And if you like those kind of stats, you can go to twitter.com/WrestleStats. And that's where you get all the stats from modern day wrestling, AEW, WWE, TNA, and Ring of Honor every single day, every single week. It's a lot. Michelle, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on my personal Twitter, which is @MichelleTater. I'm about to get real obnoxious this time of year because if you don't like college football, I mean, you can still read my tweets about it, but I get real passionate on game day, everyone. Pat McAfee ain't got nothing on me. So you can follow me over. Yeet. I was just watching that whole thing with them being drunk. It is such a great moment. But yeah, that's where you can follow me. You can also follow our Twitter account @WrestleRecap. We do a lot of retweeting of each other with Wrestle Stats, Wrestle Recap, but come follow us over there. I like to post not just wrestling stuff, but we also post a lot of nostalgia things and things from the 80s and 90s, just because that's our happy place. So yeah, Justin, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, the war continues. We're flip-flopping back and forth between companies, but it's about to start getting ugly here pretty soon, and we're going to see a lot of stuff go down. It's going to get interesting. The next show we watch for next week's episode, WWF WrestleMania 3, where WWF pretty much exploded in popularity. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Is this where Hulkamania starts too?
You'll just have to find out on Wrestle Recap.
Wrestle Recap. recap. Da, da, da.